Good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock and time for our second regular council meeting for the month of April. Welcome to anyone who's joined us on live stream this evening. Welcome to council members and staff. And we'll start by letting people know that this meeting is being audio and video recorded and live streamed on the Town of Innisfil's YouTube channel and shall form part of the record, which will be retained in accordance with the town's retention bylaw. And if you need more information about that bylaw, you can get it from our clerk's office. So our first item on the agenda is our open forum. We've had two participants sign up this evening for open forum, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak per person. And I would invite Amanda Villers to turn on her audio and video. And whenever you're ready, Amanda.
Hi, everyone. So I just want to bring in a few points. I know that we're kind of like in the middle zone right now, trying to figure out what to do, but I just want to put some points forward that although somebody found a technicality that voids a multiple decades old legal document, it shouldn't then become null and void as it is in violation to the agreement that this transaction was agreed upon. And now that it may be changed, this will impact the property values for the homes that are based on Plan 1139. Furthermore, many of us have bought it based on the fact that we did have a deeded, which was private deeded access, and which is no longer like that. And even though Friday Harbor was a thoroughly conceived development, this change could set a dangerous precedent for the future, not only for future developments in Innisfil, but also all around the GTA. And another complaint I have is even though there is no parking allowed, I've been blocked into my driveway multiple times. I can't get out. I can't get a hold of the bylaw officers because it's after hours and no one's answering the phone. And I'm stuck not being able to go anywhere because people are parking there. And there's no parking, the signs are there, people don't listen. I've called the bylaw office plenty of times, I've kept voicemails. I never see anyone come check for reinforcement. And so now all of a sudden we're getting stuck with not being able to leave our property because people just decide to park there. And that is due to the fact that more people have that public access to use that end of road. And so that's going to have to, we also have to find a solution to that because I need to be able to get out of my driveway. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Amanda. And just to let everyone know, this is regarding item C4 on the agenda tonight, which is access to West Street Beach petition. And Amanda, I'll share some personal information with you because I live on the main street of Cookstown, and more often than not, my driveway is blocked by someone who doesn't see that it's a driveway, and they're at a restaurant or at the barber shop or shopping in the village. And I call South Simcoe Police, and I've always had very good success in having them come and remove that vehicle if I can't find the owner. So just offering that for you. Another option. I know how frustrating it can be for sure. Next is Mr. Bob Dudley. Mr. Dudley.
For some reason or other, my video is not starting.
Well, it's up to you. Oh, I think there it is.
Oh, I'm here. Okay.
Mr. Dudley.
Just took a few tries.
Whenever you're ready.
Your worship, deputy mayor, councillors. Yeah, actually part of my speech now is destroyed by Amanda with the parking issues. But going back to the staff report, but I had low expectations that the staff would present something that was satisfactory to address the issues that we've got with the beach. And I've got to say, unfortunately, they met those low expectations. So, anybody without a history in this and the background, you might look at it and say, oh, there's 3 pages. There must be something in there. But all of us who have a knowledge of that issue, when you really look at what's in it, it's a nothing burger. And if the staff thinks they're resolving anything, they're wrong, and I'm insulted by some of it. So first of all, they kicked the can down the road again. I don't know how many times we've done that. Now, I do recognize the town is trying to deal with some complex issues, and so be it. It is what it is, and you've got a job to do. But for me, it's really frustrating. I retired a few years ago, hoping to have an end to this issue and enjoy myself. But this has gone on now I've been dealing with it for, over 13 years now. Now, getting back to the report itself, there's a number of temporary recommendations, but they really miss the mark. It says there'd be a sign at the end of West Street saying Innisfil residents only. And typically, we have had no issue with non-residents, until very recently, as Amanda's pointing out, some people, out-of-towners, have obviously found it. Don't know how, but until recently, we never had out-of-towners or day trippers coming to the beach from that access. And there is no parking, but it seems now, there is a bit more of an issue. And I'd like to tell her to go slash their tires, but that would be illegal, so I won't recommend it. And if I read the report correctly, there would be no signage down at the beach. And, without signage down there, there's going to be people from the Friday Harbor area accessing that beach. And actually, even if there is a sign down there, I don't think it will accomplish anything either, because the day trippers and the out-of-towners, unless Friday Harbor stops all out-of-towners and all day trippers from accessing any of that beach area, if we assume that the COVID protocols will still be in place through this summer, they'll restrict access to the beach to their residents only. Therefore, their out-of-towners and their day trippers will want somewhere to go, and the only place to go will be our beach. And even though there's a sign, they've got nowhere to go, and there is zero enforcement, and town staff said there will be none, 24 hours a day, no enforcement. So, that's the only place the out-of-towners will go. So the end result really means no change at all. It's status quo. And Friday Harbor is going to have unrestricted access again this year, unless they decide they're going to stop all out-of-towners and day trippers from accessing that entire area. So, as worded, this report doesn't satisfy any of the residents' concerns. And hopefully, if you agree with my comments that, and you agree that I'm not off the mark on this, that you'll consider my comments when you make your assessment of the staff report a little later. So thank you for the time again.
Thank you, Mr. Dudley.
Okay, thank you.
So those were the only 2 people that signed up for open forum today. So our next item on the agenda is item 3, which is the approval of the agenda. So I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda. That would be Councillor Waters and Councillor Orsatti. Is there any agenda repair required before we move this, Madam Clerk or Madam Deputy Clerk?
Thank you, Worship. No, there have been no additions to the agenda this evening.
Thank you for that. So all in favor of approval? Those opposed? That passes. So next is disclosure of interest. Is there anyone who has disclosure of pecuniary or conflict of interest on any of the items on tonight's agenda? Seeing no one indicate, I'm going to ask you if it does become apparent to you throughout the evening that you make it known at that time, and we will make sure that you get the appropriate forms to be signed by the clerk's office. Next is number 5, presentations and petitions. We have none this evening. And number 6, delegations. We do have a delegation this evening, and it is from our Innisfil Beach Park Ad Hoc Committee. And I would ask, I believe it's Mr. Ron Cohn and Ms. Kempert Martin that are making the delegations this evening. Good evening, Tanya.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Tanya, and I'm here with James tonight, representing the Innisfil Beach Park Ad Hoc Committee. We're here tonight to discuss a modular pump track at Innisfil Beach Park. Next. How did this all come about? Innisfil Beach Park Ad Hoc Committee requested additional information on the pump track, which was recommended for the park as part of the Innisfil Beach Park Master Plan. Engineering department staff provided a brief overview of the implementation plan, outdoor exercise equipment, and the pump track to the committee. Next. Engineering department staff also indicated that they were looking into the possibility of a modular pump track as a pop-up event for a weekend to let the community and local youth see what a pump track is all about. The committee discussed and requested that staff look into the option of purchasing a pump track versus renting one for just a single weekend. The committee also realized that the purchase of a pump track could be funded by the Innisfil Beach Park Ad Hoc Committee's budget. Next, I'll turn it over to James to give you a little more information about the pump track, the cost of purchasing versus renting, and some specifics on location. James?
Good evening. I'm having a problem with the video here. Oh, there we go. Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. You may be wondering, what is a modular pump track? Modular pump tracks make it possible to build a low maintenance, low cost, hard surface pump track that can be enjoyed by every age and skill level. A modular pump track can be installed as a permanent park fixture, but it can also possible to relocate and reconfigure the track. Next. So we looked at the versus purchasing the track or renting it for a weekend rental. The benefits of purchasing a pump track far outweigh those of renting a pump track for a single weekend. During COVID, a pop-up weekend could be difficult to manage as there would be lineups, and it would be hard to ensure everyone who wants to try it out can do so. With the purchase of a pump track, it could be used over the entire summer and longer, which would give everyone who wants to try it out a chance. A purchased pump track could be used at different locations and could be moved within the park. And if a permanent asphalt pump track was approved in the future at Innisfil Beach Park, then this modular pump track could still be operational during construction or move to another park for use. The modular pump track can also be left in place over winter and may need temporary fencing around it. Next. Let's look at the costs. Based on information received from engineering staff, purchasing a modular pump track would be more cost effective compared to renting a modular pump track. Pump track rental cost would be $4,000 plus HST for rental and installation for a weekend pop-up event. Pump track purchase is estimated at $60,000 plus HST, which includes purchase of the pump track and operations startup, cost for signage, picnic tables, garbage bins, etc. Annual operational costs would be approximately $3,000 for inspections and maintenance. The modular pump track will come with a 5-year warranty and has an approximate life cycle of 10 years with tamper-resistant bolts. Next. Now to discuss the location, the proposed modular track is 165 feet in length with a footprint of 25 feet wide by 74 feet long. The image shows how much space it would take up in the park in a similar location to what was proposed in the Innisfil Beach Park vision plan near the existing soccer field and tennis courts. The existing washroom has cameras that can be pointed towards the track. The pump track would have occupancy 7 kids at a time. Canada Ramp has indicated the modular track could be shipped within a couple of weeks. In preparation for this presentation, we were also able to contact some youth who have expressed support for the modular pump track. Thank you. Tanya?
Thanks, James. Yes, as you can see here, members of our Youth Connects Committee, Celine, Davina, Savannah, Aisha, Lackey, and Reese sent in pictures showing their support for the pump track. In addition, we have a student here tonight from Goodfellow Public School who would like to say a few words.
Hi, my name is Braden Martin, and I'm a grade 5 student at Goodfellow Public School. I'm really excited that we might be getting a pump track in Innisfil, so I posted a doc on my Google Classroom to see what everyone thought.
Sorry, next.
As you can see in the table, 10 out of 11 people support having a pump track in Innisfil Beach Park. I would love to have a pump track in Innisfil because then I would have somewhere to ride my bike and it would be a lot of fun. Last summer, I got to try out a pump track in Sharon and I loved it. There aren't many pump tracks nearby and it wouldn't take up a lot of space. I think it would be amazing to have a pump track at Innisfil Beach Park and I can hardly wait.
Next. Thank you, Braden. In closing, the Innisfil Beach Park Ad Hoc Committee requests that Council consider the following motion. That Council consider purchasing a modular pump track for use in Innisfil Beach Park funded through the Innisfil Beach Park Ad Hoc Committee budget for an estimated capital cost of $60,000 plus $6,000, 2 years in operating costs to be finalized through the procurement process. Next. Thank you to your worship and members of council for allowing us to present tonight. And if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer those now.
Thank you very much. Thank you to James, Tanya, and Braden for your presentation. And I'll ask now if council has any questions. Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you. I like this concept that it could be moved around throughout the municipality so we can share it with other communities. I think that's fantastic. We've got Guildford, Lefroy, Churchill, Cookstown. So I think it's a great concept, something we've seen before. My one question is just the liability issues. As you know, the municipalities sometimes get sued for the most, I'm going to say it, ridiculous reasons. So I just want to know what liability will be there and who will be responsible for that liability, or is there a waiver that they will sign when using it? That's my question. If I can get an answer, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. James and Nicole.
Hi, Deputy Mayor Davidson. In our last meeting with the committee, staff advised us that the insurance would be the same as the skate parks that you already have in town.
Anything to add, Ms. Bowman, Director Bowman?
Nothing to add, Your Worship. James is correct. In doing our research, we reached out to the City of Burlington for understanding on how they operate theirs. It's a real gem for their town, and they were able to share that's their insurance method, and we would adopt the same.
And a follow-up, Your Worship.
Go ahead.
And the simplicity with moving it around throughout the municipality, how easy is that? I can see how it's set together. How easy and what cost would be involved with moving it through different areas throughout the municipality?
Director Bowman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Much like our outdoor arena in Cookstown, staff have undertaken opportunity to learn how to construct and deconstruct that piece of equipment. We would take the same approach with this. So while we could hire out to have them do it, our understanding right now is that our staff would be very capable and have the right tools and equipment and skill sets in order to learn how to do that and be able to move it without a cost.
That's fantastic. I like to see it shared around the municipality. I think something new, and I think the kids need it with what's going on with COVID. They need a release. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Your Worship. One question I do have is, should we decide to move it? Now, when this comes into play, are we looking to keep it there for the entire summer? Or are we looking to have it a few weeks, for example, down in Churchill, and then a few weeks up in Big Bay Point, a few weeks down in Innisfil Beach Park? Is there a plan in regards to that? Or are we just kind of seeing how well it takes off and then playing it by ear?
Director Bowman.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor Fowler. The staff are considering what our options are as far as moving it. Our belief right now is that Innisfil Beach Park is a great centralized location. This summer, for example, should sports camps continue, this would offer the programming of our very own sports camps a new piece of equipment that could be safely used. So right now we are thinking about it as an Innisfil Beach Park fixture for the time being to see how it uptakes, but it remains an option that we can move it. We also need to watch what's happening this summer with COVID protocols, but happy to consider a program that would see it move around the town.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Worship. I really want to thank the committee for working hard on this project. I think a pump track is a great idea, as I've mentioned before. The trial works out perfectly to see how the uptake is for Innisfil Beach Park. If it's passed tonight and everything goes well, I hope that staff may look to repurpose this for the new Shore Acres Park that is coming online in a couple of years. And maybe we can use that as the next location to bring this on. So hopefully when it comes up in item B3, we'll get this through. And thanks to the committee for working so hard to find different options to bring this to light. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have one question regarding the staff required to ensure that the skate or the not skaters, but the riders, or whatever they are. I'm not really up on pump tracks, so just wondering how much staff are going to be required. If this is a very popular event, then they're going to need to have supervision and keep getting them rolling and making sure that they get off in the appropriate time. Do we have any idea as to how much staff that's going to entail?
Director Bowman.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor Payne. There are two layers to this. One is a COVID layer and one is sort of our everyday operating procedures. In speaking with other towns, this is treated much like, in a normal environment anyway, a skate park. And so it's self-regulated and self-monitored. And the way it usually works is you go for a bit and you would get off and users would cycle through in turns. We would expect it to carry on perhaps after an initial excitement at launch in such a way in our park. Now, with COVID in mind, we are considering how we open this and that we do that perhaps quietly, maybe on a weekday with other strategies so we don't have a crowd forming at the track. So we are mindful and will staff accordingly for a launch, but otherwise we wouldn't expect this to require staffing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wondering how much area does this pump track take up? I know for the park, it's not a problem, but for in other areas, does it take up like, I don't know, a half an acre or an acre or just a small lot? What's the area it takes up?
Director Bowman, or should I go to Ms. Goodwin for that?
I'm happy to field that, Mayor Dolan.
Sure.
Perhaps if I could ask the clerk's office to rewind the slides to the one that shows the area. And I believe the number was it 25? And James, I think you shared this number. Could you share it again, please?
It is 165 feet in length, 25 feet wide, and 74 feet long. It's the equivalent of a tennis court.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Other questions or comments? Councillor Orsatti?
Thank you. First, I wanted to say thank you to Tanya and James, committee members from the park for your presentation today. I think it's very helpful, and especially including our youth in the dialogue and the presentation. I just wanted to just sort of verify for the rest of council with Director Bowman that this is a non-motorized track, so that it is just bicycles, etc. Or maybe we'll start with that. Director Bowman, thank you.
Director Bowman?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan, and through you to Councillor Orsatti. Yes, this is not a track that's intended for motorized vehicles. It is typically used by youth on scooters, and the picture on screen actually shows that quite well. There's scooters and smaller bikes. It's not designed for a motorized vehicle, and probably wouldn't call to someone on a motorized vehicle either. There's not the distance or the type of jumps and spaces that would usually be part of a BMX or ATV track.
Thank you. And just a follow-up statement there, Your Worship. I think the advantage to this pilot is that it allows the opportunity to gain feedback for the location in Innisfil Beach Park before staff come back to council with a report on the recommended permanent pump track. So, you know, trialing it for a location and trialing it in the park, I think is a good idea. I think what makes this a good economical sense is that with it being modular, that it can be moved to different locations. And I think that's such an advantage to have other locations at different, you know, be moved to somewhere else that warranted this with a youth population. And I would just want to make a comment also on a question about whether it would be mobile, you know, periodically in 1 year. This is a recommendation to council in item B3 to be funded out of the funds from the Innisfil Beach Park Ad Hoc Committee. So it doesn't come out of the town's current budget because we have an allocated budget for this committee. So I'd certainly like to see that this would stay in Innisfil Beach Park for a year to at least give it that full experience of that before it would be moved to another area. But that would be up for discussion later, but especially with the funds coming out of that committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions from members of council? Seeing none, thank you so much to Tanya and James and Braden for an excellent presentation. We will be discussing this a little later in item B3, so please feel free to stick around if you like, or you can sign off and follow us on our YouTube channel, whatever you prefer. So thanks again, and the recommendation is that the delegation regarding the modular pump track be received. And could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Orsatti and Councillor Fowler, all those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So that is it for delegations. The next item is number 7, which is County Council, Municipal Associations, Conservation Authority Committees, and our Emergency Operations Center. Before I go to our Emergency Operations Center update, is there anyone who has updates from any of the committees that you sit on behalf of council? Councilor, Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you, Worship. We had County Council this week. I think the biggest concern we had was illegal grow-ops and the manipulation of the federal law for obtaining grow-ops. I think we've sent a letter to the province and then to the federal minister to take a look at this, and Deputy Warden Dolan made some good connections for council to take a look at. I think there's letters coming to members of council that we can share. That seemed to be our biggest concern, that we need to sort of bring it under control so that we don't have a loophole in the law that's being abused. And that, I think we're fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to mention that the bridges on the Cookstown Trail are at this time being repaired. So all of the problems that we have had with them hopefully will be fixed and ready to go soon.
Thank you, Councillor. I saw other hands and I'm sorry I didn't write them down. Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to be addressing the pitching committee under item B2 when we go into committee of the whole. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Anyone else with updates? I will supply just a couple. So on April the 21st, I attended the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit board meeting. Continue to be impressed by the commitment of these folks that are running a marathon and have been for over a year. And they're working very hard. Things are really ramping up right now. Next, I also had an update with the, there was MPs, MPPs, and other municipal elected officials on April 23rd with an update from RVH. And again, they're seeing quite the surge and an alarming increase in cases, people getting younger, sicker, and faster. Ms. Scott said a month ago they had 3 people in intensive care, and a month later they have 61 people in intensive care. So there's some of those are transfers from larger centers that are coming here for care, but continue to be amazed by those people who keep going to work every day and must be getting awfully, awfully tired. Here in Innisfil, as of today, throughout COVID, 953 cases of COVID in Innisfil, currently 198 active. In the last 24 hours, we did lose another Innisfilian to COVID. So we have 11 deaths so far and 7 people who are currently in the hospital. So our thoughts and prayers go out to the families of those people, and just another reminder to people that it is real, and please follow all of the public health directions and continue to try to flatten this curve on this 3rd wave. And also on Friday, heads of council had a meeting with the Minister of Health, the Premier, Minister McNaughton, and the Solicitor General was on the call as well, just getting an update and asking questions to the provincial government. And then finally on Monday, I attended a police service board meeting. And we have 6 new frontline officers, recruits that we've hired. Some of them new, but some of them replacements for those who have either retired or off right now. And welcome to them. We did see a copy of the annual report, which I'll make sure all of council gets a copy. The board administrator is going to send a copy to the clerk's office. So we'll all get to see a copy of this annual report for 2020. And the chief wanted me to specifically thank Michelle McKinley, who is part of our communications team. She is also a graphic designer, and she did a ton of work and is responsible for all of the graphic design for the new annual report for the police. So just another example of where we're one town, one team, and we share resources across. So that saved the police from having to go out and hire external expertise to do that. So thank you so much to Michelle for that. And I'm not seeing any other hands, so we'll move on then to our consent list for the evening. And we'll go through these, and anyone who wants to pull, Councillor Nicol.
Your Worship, I just wasn't sure if there was an update from the EOC at all.
Of course, thank you. My fault. Of course, Jen, can we please have an update from the EOC? Thank you, Councillor Nicol. Every time he puts his hand up, I think, I forgot to get a mover and a seconder. Thank you.
Thank you, Your
Jen.
Worship, and thank you, Councillor Nicol. Through you to Council, I'll start by sharing some updates from the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit. Cases have been increasing in the last 5 or so weeks with an incidence rate of 119 cases per 100,000 population in Simcoe Muskoka. As Her Worship mentioned, we're starting to see younger people getting sicker and faster. It is important to note, though, that during this third wave, there has been no death of anyone who has received at least 1 vaccine dose. So it's just something that we think is really important to share. Test positivity rate is 5.3% in Simcoe and 6.5% in Muskoka, and anything above 3% is concerning. Test results have shown also that all cases are now variants of concern. An update regarding vaccines. Almost 27% of the Simcoe Muskoka population have had at least 1 dose of vaccine. The Moderna AstraZeneca supply is limited and will continue to be limited for a couple more weeks. In regards to the stay-at-home order, in order to stop the spread of COVID-19, the province has indicated in its orders that marina facilities are not to be used for recreational boating purposes. Accordingly, our ramps are also not to be used for recreational boating. They remain accessible for allowing purposes such as enabling individuals to access their place of residence or their other property. At this time, parks and beaches remain available for exercise and walk-through only. Signage around the latest restrictions is in place at our parks. Playgrounds, benches, dog parks remain open, while other amenities have been closed in accordance with the provincial order. Our bylaw staff are following the lead of South Simcoe Police regarding enforcement, and our customer service team is taking appointments as needed while continuing to provide virtual and digital services and communication. And our Idea Lab and library continues to offer curbside service to residents with a minimum number of staff working in branch to deliver the service, with the remainder working from home. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. Any questions or comments from Ms. Ray? Thank you very much for that update. Yes, it is the first time that the positivity rate for Muskoka is higher than Simcoe. So it's no longer a GTA issue. So thank you for that. All right, so now we'll go into the consent agenda and see what items council wants to discuss further, or please feel free to ask questions on any item. You don't have to pull it, just to ask a question or provide a comment. So item A1 is the special council meeting minutes from April the 14th. A2, the council meeting minutes for April the 14th. B1, the Innisfil Municipal Heritage Committee report from April the 8th. B2, the Kitchen Committee report from April the 15th. Councillor Fowler, excuse me.
Thank you. Thank you, Worship. I just want to update everybody on the situation with the Pitchin family events that we've been discussing. We had everything set up and ready to go with the caveat that if the stay-at-home order was extended to the end of May, that we would be postponing it for the summer. We realized after long discussion that it was the potential to have a safer event as vaccinations become more available over the summer is a greater protection to the residents. Our top priority has always been the residents' health and safety. So this gives us time to immunize a greater population before we start delving into what we have. Now, that being said, there are residents who are still stepping up to the plate, and they are doing everything they can to beautify our town. They're going out in their bubbles, maintaining distance, masks, gloves, the whole bit, which is very admirable, and cleaning lines, the roads, wherever they can. Now, what we'd like to share with the public now is that if they are to do this, or they wish to do this, and they maintain, again, their bubble, their familial bubble, and the measures put in place, that if they leave the garbage bags by the side of the road and send an email or give a phone call to customer service operations, who has stepped up big time, considering the amount of work it would be, are willing to go and pick up the bags when the opportunity arises. So thank you, operations, for everything. Thank you, customer service, for taking on yet another additional responsibility. And thank you to the town residents who are, no matter what, never giving up. So.
Thank you, Councillor Fowler, for that update. B3, the Innisfil Beach Park Ad Hoc Committee reports from February 23rd and April 21st. Councillor Orsatti.
Thank you. I just wanted to share, and especially, you know, for any residents watching, and council certainly knows that I was the one that was opposed to a pump track in Innisfil Beach Park. The recommendation in this report to purchase one as a pilot, I think is, I just want to reiterate that I think it's a good win-win solution. It allows a test period to trial it in that location to see if the permanent one that would be showing up in about 2 years' time is really the right location. And if not, then you know, there's other opportunities for locations for this within the town. So I think that it's not something that's wasted, that it is an item that can be used anywhere. It's just finding the right location. So testing it where staff thought it would be best used is a great place to start. I think it probably needs a year trial, but we can wait and see on that. And I just wanted to share those comments.
Thank you, Councillor Orsatti. Anyone else? Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Originally, I was against the permanent one in the park, but I think that this is a great opportunity if it's something that can be moved around. Like, I agree with Councillor Orsatti that, you know, if it doesn't work out in the park, there's a half a dozen other places in town where it can go. So it's certainly, I want people to know it's not wasted money, because we can put it anywhere, and the park is a great place for a pilot project.
Thank you. Anyone else? I just want to thank the, again, the ad hoc committee for digging in on this one and pushing it forward. I know they are popping up all over Ontario. There was one in Washago just recently opened, another one in Perth. So I know Guelph is working hard to get theirs up and running. So they're becoming quite popular. So I think it's going to be great to have something like that here. Okay, so that isn't being pulled. And so we'll move to C, which is staff reports for action. C1, the 2020 final operating and capital results. Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. I think I'll pull that one. I'll refer that to committee.
Thank you, Councillor. It would be a shame after all that work if somebody didn't do it, because that is quite a report.
It sure is.
Next is item C2, the 2021 final tax levy bylaw. Seeing none, I just wanted to point out that because of a lot of gymnastics that our staff did, we were able to continue to hold the 0% increase, and thank staff very much for all the work. I mean, not only are we going through COVID, so we've got expenses and also lost revenue, but to be able to make this happen was remarkable. So thank you so much to the treasurer and the CFO and their team. Next is item C3, the status update on the expanding payment options for residents and businesses. C4, the staff report access to West Street Beach petition update. Deputy Mayor Davidson.
I'd like that vote, please.
Okay, pull, send to committee. Thank you. Next is C5, the Backyard Hens and Settlement Area in Settlement Areas Pilot Project. Councillor Ices?
Yes, Your Worship, I'd like to refer that to committee as well.
Thank you. Next is C6, the part lot control exemption at Friday Harbor. C7, the pedestrian crossing of Highway 89 in Cookstown. Councillor Nicol.
Your Worship, if the Deputy Mayor wants to pull it, I just wanted to comment on it. Just that it's great work by the staff, and all the intent of this is to provide a safer direct route to the Trans-Canada Trail. I think this will also provide another level of traffic calming to help slow people down through the town of Cookstown. So I don't know if the Deputy Mayor had something else to add or he wanted to pull it, but I just wanted to say great thanks to staff for helping out in the village of Cookstown.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor?
I concur with Councillor Nicol. This is fantastic. I remember meeting with residents in Cookstown several years ago with their concerns, and it's nice to see it finally come together. So I congratulate staff on doing a great job in finding a solution here. Long time coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Item C8, which is the fire safety grant transfer payment agreement. Okay, next is item D, staff reports for information. There are none of those, and there are also no bylaws this evening, and there's no correspondence for action. There is 3 pieces of correspondence for information, however. MTO, which is just what we spoke about, the letter from Minister Mulroney granting the funds for the crossing. The Innisfil board minutes, Innisfil Library board minutes for March the 15th. I just wanted to take a moment and a big thank you to Monica Goodfellow, who has chaired the library board for many years and done a fantastic job, and congratulate Ann Smith and thank her for stepping up to be the next chair. And then the next item, G3, which is correspondence from the municipality of York about the Upper York sewage solution. And that I think is going to be discussed. I don't think we have to pull it, but it can be discussed at the same time as the motion that's on the agenda tonight later. And next is the consent list recommendation. And could I have a mover and a seconder that everything other than what we have pulled has been confirmed this evening, and that includes the pump track for those who are still maybe on the call. And that's moved by Councillor Van Berkel and seconded by Councillor Ices. All those in favor? That passes, thank you. And next is an item to resolve into the committee of the whole for some more fulsome discussion. Councillor Ices and Councillor Nicol, all those in favor? That is carried. So now we'll move into committee, and the first item that was pulled was C1, which is Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. I was wondering if I could get a seconder to put this on the floor. Councillor Nicol, thank you. So I pulled this item just because it is such a substantial report that really delves into all the different items that staff had to deal with in 2020. And I remember back, this being my first year in, or first term in council, about 1 month into our term, we had to approve the budget for 2019 and 2020. So this was the budget that we approved. And I don't think any one of us thought that the numbers would turn out the way they did. And if you just look at the motion, you would think that we did a great job of budgeting, because we came in, $75,000 over what we intended to, but obviously there was a whole lot more in that with all the shortfalls from the pandemic. So kudos to staff. If any resident wants to get a really good snapshot of all the things that are going on in the town. I think this is the report to read, 27 pages of nighttime reading. And I guess my question to staff was, the reason we came on the plus was obviously with the help of the provincial government and the $1.7 million program to help us. They are budgeting for some more help this year, but it's less than half of that. And I know there's probably some explanation in the report, but I wonder if staff could just maybe help us understand how this next year might go with the considerable challenges and the less funding.
Thank you, Councillor Ices. CFO Melanishin.
For your worship to Councillor Ices. Thank you. Thank you for, it is a lot of work that's been gone over the last year to achieve these type of these numbers and come up with this report. As far as yes, we had a lot of opportunities because of the provincial grant funding that came through, 1.7 million for 2020, and preliminary numbers for 2022 are 872,000. So there is that funding that was, who knows what the provincial government may offer up again in the future. We did come up with a really prudent budget this year and did factor a lot of we had some assumptions in there as far as estimating what facilities would be closed and for how long. So there are some opportunities that because we didn't overestimate our revenues, we should be coming in reasonably well. And a point to note too is that we have the opportunity of the tax rate stabilization reserve. We did not tap into it. It won't happen to tap into it as significantly as we had originally anticipated because of these extra grant offerings by the province. So our estimate for 2022 is maybe a $50,000 utilization of the tax rate stabilization reserve. And that's from past years, past councils, prudent efforts as well to build this reserve up, especially for cases like this. This is the perfect example of why we would use a case. A global pandemic is a great reason to tap into the tax rate stabilization reserve. And thus far we haven't had to and won't have to significantly, hopefully, in the future. So lots of opportunities for fallback positions to protect the tax levy and not put the burden back onto the taxpayer.
Thank you so much. Follow up, Councillor Ices.
Yeah, thank you, CFO Melanishin. Just maybe a question about how the province arrived at the number, the funding that we received. Is that based on population? How do they come up with how much we get?
Ms. Webb? You're on mute, Ms. Webb.
Sorry about that. Through you, Mayor Dolan, to Councillor Ices. So for the municipal safe start portion of the grants, phase 1 and 3, I believe is basically been prepared on households. So it's just an allocation made. There was, for phase 2 funds, we did go through an extensive application, reporting on our COVID impacts to date and forecast out to the end of the year. So I'm not sure how the province used that in coming up with and calculating our phase 2 funds, but we did go through an extensive process in providing them with information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Webb. Any other questions or comments? I had just one, and it was actually a suggestion by Mayor Keffer of Bradford at the county. Was that just yesterday? Oh my goodness. So his suggestion was that a letter of thanks go out to the provincial and federal governments, thanking them for the Safe Restart money, and just letting them know we appreciated the support that we got. As you know, municipal governments are not allowed to have deficit budgeting. So we would have to have it from somewhere. And I know there was a lot of municipalities that were, you know, quite worried about how it was going to turn out. So I just wondered what the appetite was for a similar correspondence coming out from our office, just saying thank you both to the provincial government for their funding, but also the federal government for the doubling of the gas tax. Can I just get a show of hands? Councillor Waters, did you want to speak, or are you showing your hand?
Showing my hand.
Okay. Okay, so we'll do that. I don't think we need a motion or anything. We'll just take direction of that. So thank you. I think we're very quick to tell other levels of government what they're doing wrong. So I think when they do something right, we should show our thanks for that as well. Thank you. So that's been duly moved and seconded. The motion is in front of you. All those in favor? Those opposed? That is carried unanimously. The next item was C4, and that was Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Okay, well, you heard from our delegations tonight what their perspective is on this. Unfortunately, there was a loophole that was sort of decades ago was sort of overlooked or manipulated to take the speech away from the residents in that area. I know what they're suggesting, Innisfil residents only sign be put in that area and also be put on Friday Harbor's fence, I think facing their beach. I think that's imperative that it be put there as well. I'm questioning if it needs to say Innisfil. How about residents only as a possibility? Because what we're having is a big influx at Friday Harbor and on Big Bay Point of Airbnbs. These people are not residents of Innisfil. And I know we're still having some situations with Airbnbs. I received a notice this weekend that finally some legal action was taken against an Airbnb south of Big Bay Point. And that one of the residents actually had a Canada-wide warrant for his arrest. So I found that quite interesting, that these are the kind of people that are coming in to use these Airbnbs. And it was a group of younger people, of course. So, and the day trippers that Mr. Dudley discussed are not Innisfil residents. They may be renting it at Friday Harbor and Airbnb, but they are not residents. So therefore, I don't think they should have Innisfil residents. So therefore, they should not have access to that beach. Other than that, I know we need to look further into this to see what kind of solution we can come up with to appease. Also, and I heard that there was not going to be any enforcement if they call bylaw. These people are taxpayers of the town. They have the same level, deserve the same level of service as any other resident in this municipality. When they call bylaw, when an infraction is taking place, action should be taken. And I'm not saying that bylaw is at fault. Matter of fact, I saw bylaw do some good work on Saturday with an Airbnb on Big Bay Point. They came by the house at approximately, I would say, around 11:30. They observed the house. No action was being done in the house. And then South Simcoe came by about 45 minutes later. I was watching, and they checked the house. So we know enforcement can be done. It should be done. And for this year with the COVID situation, if it's not 100% vaccination, I would ask that staff take a look at put residents only sign. And if Airbnb or day trippers are using it, that we take the appropriate action that is necessary. Council, I know you have all similar beach accesses throughout your home, all of our municipalities, all our wards. And I think this is a concern also for Councillor Nickel. He's got a proposal for a resort coming in his area. And I think this is a problem that you may actually have to face in the next few years. I've got a few years ahead of you on it. So I just warn you, we need to handle this really, really carefully. So in the recommendation, in its residents only, if we could change that, if that council feels that that would enhance and that bylaw does do its part. So here we go. The staff be directed to sign the West Street Lake Access Point as residents only from May 1st, 21-23, and that bylaw can be, laws will be enforced.
And do you have a seconder for that motion, Deputy Mayor?
I've got Councillor Van Berkel and Councillor Kenneth Fowler.
You only need one, so.
I need three.
Pick one. Pick one. Who's your seconder?
I will go with Councillor Payne.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion on the floor, and I would ask for comments and questions on that motion. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Worship. With the point of residents only, I'm not too sure whether you say Innisfil residents or you say residents only. People who live at Friday Harbor, who actually are living there, are residents. And I think we're splitting hairs, but I think you'd either have people who are living at Friday Harbor who are residents who could still use it. If they're renting it out as an Airbnb, it's still the same numbers who would be using the beach. So whether it's a resident or whoever they rent out, they can still use the beach. And I'm sure most of those residents who own places, when they rent them out, tell the people who are there, you're residents and you have the same access as everyone. I'm sure that's what they're telling them. So I would like to see something that would be a little more specific than residents only or Innisfil residents only, because I don't think it's going to do the job. So I'm not suggesting. My personal feelings of this, I think that the original intent of the person who donated this meant it to stay as a beach only for those residents who it was bought for, and I fully support them on moving forward in terms of trying to regain it as a private beach. So I'm fully supportive of that. I just not too sure what type of wording or what type of sign you can have that says that only those people are realistically should be allowed to use it. So if anyone has any other suggestions, I would support them on that.
Thank you. Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I kind of tend to agree with Councillor Waters. I think we're relying too heavily on signs and no action. I think, we got to come up with a concrete plan, not only for there, but for a lot of other access points as well. Signs just don't cut it. I see it in my ward, and you know what? By the time you call bylaws, people are gone, or they've gone. So, in my opinion, they don't work. People just don't. They don't abide by signs. You got to come up with something better than signs, some more concrete ways of solving these problems. I agree with Alex. This road end was deeded to the people down there, and I think we should find out some way, whether we give it back to them, sell it to them for $1, or come up with a price and let everybody pay. That's what it was intended for. Just because we found a loophole in the bylaw to say, we can legally take it away from you, that doesn't make it right. So I've got a problem with a sign, no matter what you put on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Your Worship. If we're talking about serious measures here, the idea of putting up a sign relies on the people who are currently abusing the privilege that they're given. If ultimately, this is my perspective on it at least, if the gate is there, close it off. If someone wants to use the property, they can easily walk around the entire length of the fence. It's no different than if they want to go down to the beach that's town owned in Councillor Asadi's ward, or Councillor Nichols' ward. They have to get into a vehicle and actually go to the beach. Just the ease of convenience propagates the situation. And if we can just, in essence, as Friday Harbor has its own beach, it has its own amenities. And as I understand, according to Deputy Mayor Davidson, a lot of the people that are coming are being directed by the Friday Harbor staff that are day trippers. So don't make it easy. If this is town land and then it's town property and a town fence, then if you're going to go use it, don't make it easier for them to do it. Just go around the length of the fence. If you're truly serious about going to the beach, then you'll make that extra effort for a 5-minute walk. It's no different than going for a 10-minute drive down to Leonard's Beach or a 15-minute drive down to Innisfil Beach Park. If you're serious, you'll find a way. If not, don't make it easy for the people that are abusing it for all the others.
Can I ask Director Bowman if you could just summarize the discussions with Friday Harbor and how your efforts to curtail behavior that had been suggested had happened last year.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I understand correctly, so in speaking with Friday Harbor about this site, that they recognized that there were guests coming to their property that were utilizing that site as well. Sorry, my cat is playing piano for you. Certainly in discussions with them now going forward, they understand the pressure that is on that piece of property, and they do understand the desire of those with Plan 1139. And we've certainly seen a good spirit of cooperation from them. And when we talk about enforcement this summer, I think really that's how we set this up for success is really working with Friday Harbor and ensuring that their messaging, their staff, their residents understand that space and respect it, whether that's through signage as well as cooperative conversations. They have shown every sign of being a willing partner.
And can I ask Director Bowman, is the fence or the opening in the fence that was from the parking lot over to make this more accessible, is it open or closed?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, it has been closed. It was closed off sometime in the late fall or over the winter. When we went to visit the site in January, it had already been closed, and we're talking with them about fixing it up a little bit so it has the effect of being more permanent and well constructed.
Thank you. Councillor Nicol, then Councillor Payne, and then we'll go for second rounds.
Your Worship, obviously, as Deputy Mayor alluded to, this is a bit of a tricky one. Although it's written as a temporary solution, I do ask if it's actually enforceable. I don't know what law restricts the general public from just accessing a public beach. I don't know how many calls are going to exist or result from this for bylaw, and what the impact will be to the other water accesses as identified. Will there be another dozen requests to close those beaches as well? I think option 4 makes sense, but based on what's been here, a couple of signs, if that helps the residents get through this year until the study is done, then that makes sense to me. But I just don't know how enforceable it is at this point. So.
Thank you. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a question regarding the beach. Is there an environmental restriction that a fence could go further into the water? Would that be allowed? It would be more of a deterrent if it going in further into the water, and it'll stop them from sneaking across. Whether that would work or not, or if you could have a rope, sort of a rope thing going from the fence to a pole that's into the water with a sign on it that's big that says, "Do not leave Friday Harbor," or "This is not Friday Harbor property." So it may deter them from going across there. Just something that's going to catch their eye, that's going to give them like, hey, I don't think I'm supposed to go across there. Just there needs to be something there to deter them.
Director Bowman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Payne. To visit the site, you would see that there is a fence that runs all the way down to the high water point at the water. Past that, we can't put in anything permanent, as ice, water, movement on the beach would ultimately move that rock, post, etc. But just trying to think creatively on the spot, I recognize that there is that gap between, on many days, the water line and that post. But perhaps we could produce for example, a sandwich board type of sign that if the residents of and users of that space wanted to ensure that it, stayed in its spot, or maybe they moved it down to the waterfront, it would be a low cost investment that they might find as a useful tool. I noticed that they do keep a set of chairs down there, plastic lawn chairs. Similar concept, maybe they move that and place it in between the fence and the water line to further encourage people to stay on the right sides of the fence.
Thank you, Director Bowman. That's a good suggestion. Councillor Asadi.
Thank you. I think we can all agree that this is a unique situation and certainly causes a lot of pressure for the residents on West Street and the others, because it's located beside a resort that has, I think, 1,000 residents or 1,000 units. So, and they have visitors. And so it does create, you know, a lot of pressure from people going around. As Director Bowman has said, you can't continue the fence further in the water. So trying to restrict people going around it. And I just wondered, you know, about a different, I know that you say signage doesn't work. It does work in some measures. It's a little Band-Aid, and anything we can try first, you know, even for a short period. I think it's the pandemic that has changed and brought a lot of people to a lot of different areas that they've discovered, because I'm sure that everyone's found that people are now hitting different spots that non-residents had never found before. And I wondered if it's a little bit of a white, well, it's not a white lie, but if there was a sign on the Friday Harbor side of the fence on the beach side that says Friday Harbor ends here. For me, if I was using that beach, I wouldn't go to the other because I would think that's someone's private property. So it's stating that it ends there and you really don't cross over. So for anybody who was a visitor or anybody else, it just, I think it would slow down or deter anyone from going around to that use. I found that having patio chairs or plastic chairs in an access point has only encouraged others and created more problems in my ward in that one. But I don't know that we have the magic answer. But I just thought that if there was signage that said Friday Harbor property ends here, working with Friday Harbor to ensure that their staff or volunteers or their beach patrol do not recommend for people to go around that property, because it delineates. If you want to do it, then walk out on Innisfil, you know, Big Bay Road and walk all the way around, but don't go that way, and it would just slow it down. So I don't know, just looking for ways that we can make it more enjoyable for the residents that are on West Street that are having the problems. And the parking, I think that's also increased from the pandemic as well. And it's certainly, I think we can all, you know, have sympathy for anyone that's experiencing that. But I'm not aware of bylaw not being able to assist with enforcing the rules. If we don't have enough bylaw, I guess that's something that we would, you know, need to address with the extra summer students, because they can ticket and, you know, and save our regular bylaw for more addressing other issues. So the other summer bylaw officers are able to ticket any vehicles that would be blocking a driveway.
Thank you. Yeah, I would say that definitely bylaw would be able to assist with blocking driveways, absolutely, as with Simcoe Police. My concern is if bylaw is asked to ask somebody for their proof of residency, AKA carding, which is not. And we don't do that at Innisfil Beach Park. You know, you'll all remember what we went through at Innisfil Beach Park last year with residents saying we weren't doing enough just by restricting the parking. They wanted us to actually, you know, make people show some kind of ID, which we're not able to do. But absolutely, you know, parking would be something that we could do. I did have one question for Director Bowman, and that was in item 3. It talks about the Lake Simcoe enjoyment strategy, but in the item that we just discussed in C1, it talks about canceling the Lake Simcoe enjoyment strategy, and that scope of work be incorporated into the PKS 105, the Parks Master Plan update. So I just wanted to know, does that wording then have to be changed under item 3?
Thank you, Your Worship. And just to clarify, I'm happy to report staff found a lot of synergies between the Parks Master Plan and the Lake Simcoe Enjoyment Strategy. They overlap in a number of areas, and so it was much more efficient and sensible to go out for that that good work in tandem. And so that will continue. In fact, it's out at tender and expected back soon. So we hope to get that moving. I would have to look to the deputy clerk and clerk's team to advise whether or not that would need to be changed. It has been included with the Parks Master Plan. So I'm not sure if we really need a language change here.
Okay, thank you, Director. Okay, second round of comments. Deputy Mayor Davidson.
I think I might have a solution here with the day trippers and the Airbnb people from Friday Harbor to address this to Nicole Bowman. I know that the people who own the residence at Friday Harbor, they can buy a membership to the beach club. Their beach club will not allow them to share it with Airbnbs people. They can't go, they can rent out their units for Airbnb, but those people cannot use the Friday Harbor amenities, even though they have an ownership to it. What maybe we should do is ask Friday Harbor to contact their condo board, and their condo board can advise those that are using their units for Airbnb that this access, this beach access, is not to be given to their renters. They're not allowed to go there. And I do know that the latest building that opened at Friday Harbor has a very large pool area for the residents of that particular building. So I see that Friday Harbor is making progress in adding more pools that aren't to the beach club private use only. So if Nicole, if they could reach out to the condo board and have the condo board put a letter together to the units, that all units that if you're renting it out, please do not advise them to use this beach access other than the beach, because the beach club is not accessible to them. That may help a little bit with it. And I still would like the wording and that bylaw rules be enforced. I just want to make sure. I think that's a little bit of hesitant for people if they know they can possibly be charged. So let's try and find a solution for this year to minimize the impact, and let's keep the data at fingertips so we can use that data when we're making a final solution. If that would help, I think that we can make a step each way in the direction, okay?
Thank you, Director Bowman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through each Deputy Mayor Davidson, I think that's worthy to explore. I have only had positive interactions since I've started with Friday Harbor. I don't see why they would find that a barrier. So I'm happy to go down that road and follow through on that idea. I thank you for considering further that issue of enforcement. So per the Mayor's comments, the issue of carding was what was on our mind with respect to that comment. And so we didn't want to see our bylaw officers being called in on suspect of someone being from out of town, and to ask them to show ID, that wasn't the community we wanted to be, or put them in that position. So with respect to your comment, yes, happy to follow through with Friday Harbor. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting CAO Chaperoux.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I like the idea of signage that says Friday Harbor property ends here, in tandem with residents only signage. I think those together will do a good job. And also that I have talked with Friday Harbor at their senior level, and they said that they're more than happy to support council's decision with this. So if the decision is to make sure that they are not directing people to the West Street Park, they are more than happy to facilitate.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just 3 points I'd like to make is that I think 2 weeks ago on a beautiful sunny day, I cycled up to Friday Harbor, and halfway between the lake and where the parking is, I was able to freely walk through the fence to the other side. So the fence was open there. I walked right through to the other side because I wanted to see what it was like, because I'd never visited before. So there's still access from one side to the other side, as far as I could tell anyways. Point 2, is have we had any further discussion with the residents about the idea of them taking ownership of that and being responsible for it in the future? Or are we waiting to still have those discussions by kicking the can down the road a little bit and nothing really changing this summer? And the last point I will make is that I have never been on the other side of the boating channel. I know there's about maybe 200 feet of Friday Harbor property before the first residence that's on that side. I don't know what it's like for swimming, and I'm just wondering, is that side appropriate to turn into a beach so it expands Friday Harbor's water access through a beach? And I don't know if any of the staff have been over there or what the case is in that particular situation. So an alternative to improve Friday Harbor's beach and beach access so they would be less likely to use the small private beach that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. I think Director Bowman's taking notes. Did you need a response? Did you want to respond to that, Director?
I'm happy to share a few thoughts if that would be helpful. And if I understood you correctly, Councillor Waters, you've said that there's the hole in the fence has been reopened. Is that
I was there about 2 weeks ago, and it looked like I think it was about 2 weeks ago that I cycled up there and I walked right through it. So unless it's been fixed since then, that was about 2 or 3 weeks ago that I cycled up there. So I could be corrected.
That's okay. Either way, I'm happy to investigate alongside with Friday Harbor. The intent is for that to be closed, and Friday Harbor understands that request. And if it's been opened, it wouldn't have been by their staff. And I'm sorry, I missed writing down your second point, but the third one was about the beach on the other side. And so I had occasion to meet with the incoming CEO of Friday Harbor, and we actually discussed that. So I placed that on his radar as something this community is concerned about, the amount of beach space that they have. And that was of interest to him, and he was taking that away for some thoughts. Currently, it's not being used for that purpose. Whether it's the condition of the waterfront or just how they've sort of set themselves up, it's not current for that purpose. And could I ask for that second piece of your?
The second question was around whether or not we've had any type of open dialogue with the residents about do they have any interest in assuming that beach? Because if they don't want to assume it and the costs or the responsibilities go along with it, then the only option we do have is to keep it a private beach and sign it. Sorry, keep it a public beach and sign it.
Right, thank you. And yes, I have not heard from the group as to whether or not they have an interest or have taken steps to form an association. So on that staff report, I know there was in brackets, a sale is a potential solution in this situation, but that would assume that they have formed an association similar to we see in other areas. And certainly when we come to that discussion, if it may be, that would be something we want to follow up with them more on.
Thank you. That is option 1 in the report. So I know that Ms. Villers is chatting with us tonight, saying that they're more than willing to. So we'll expect that offer from them. Anyone else? Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just wondering, in my area, I have several beaches, and 1 or 2 that really work well because, for instance, the Bel Air Beach Association, which is a fairly big piece of land and it belongs to the town. And they formed an association there and they have a big sign up, but it's the Bel Air Beach Association, and the people, take responsibility for it. There's actually an association that pay in a little bit each year. And, they use this money, like I seen them in there yesterday, raking up goose poop and doing whatever, getting it ready for this coming season, as well as the Nantyre Park. It's an association, so maybe they can look into something like that where we still retain ownership, but the people can form an association where they look after it, because we have no problem here with Bel Air Beach, because the sign and a little fence that says Bel Air Beach Association, people just automatically think that it's a private beach, it belongs to somebody else, but it isn't. They don't try and keep anybody out. They don't, you know, like anyone in the area can go in there, but because of what it says in there, you know, Bel Air Beach Association and Entire Park Association, it sort of gives everybody a feeling when they drive by, oh, well, we can't go in here. So maybe that's the answer, you know, I don't know. Maybe worth looking into.
Thank you, Councillor Van Berkel, except I think they do actually own the land and pay taxes on it. Like
I don't think Bel Air Beach, no.
No?
No, I don't think so. I think
Okay, well, we'll have to look into that. That's an interesting point. Thank you for bringing that up. Anyone else? Seeing none, we have a motion to amend, and the motion to amend is, and that bylaw rules be enforced, and it was moved and seconded by, Deputy Mayor Davison, seconded by Councillor Payne. So do we vote first, Madam Deputy Clerk, on the motion to amend? Okay, so we do. So those in favor of the clause 2, which is the motion to amend? Those opposed? That looked like it was carried. I think I had a number there. And then back to the original motion as amended, and same mover and seconder. Those in favor? So I guess I have a question. I can see Councillor Setti.
Thank you. I'm just wondering about the other recommendations of signage on Friday Harbor property that says Friday Harbor property ends here, like the other measures that were recommended. I don't see it in this motion as amendment. Is that taken as, how will staff proceed with that?
So I would suggest that the resolution or the staff report recommended signage. So I think the staff will take direction over exactly what that wording is. Okay. But signage was actually part of the staff report to begin with. So it's just a matter of words, and I'm sure staff will take direction based on council's discussion this evening. Mm-hmm. Councillor Waters.
A question on point 3. Does this mean that staff will engage the residents, or is this just an open-ended discussion with town residents, or is this more pointed about coming up with a strategy around this particular access point and coming up with a solution that might mean that the residents purchase that property? So I want to get a better idea what point 3 actually means.
Director Bowman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Waters. Yes, so the Lake Simcoe enjoyment strategy will look at all of our waterfront access points, including this one, and staff will be sharing the various sensitivities and issues that are apparent at each of them. And they will be doing fulsome community engagement regarding the known issues, as well as exploring general topics that may affect the entire waterfront. So we would expect to come back with specific recommendations for this site that take into account this discussion and others that have been had.
Do we have a timeline on that? Because obviously the residents are getting frustrated in terms of how long this has taken. And so having that discussion where they're involved and they get to have a say in terms of what the solution is to that, would be nice to be able to have a timeline on it for them to say that, you know, either it's going to be this year or next year, but this can't continue to go on because you can tell in their voices they're very, very frustrated.
Director Bowman.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor Waters. I'm frantically looking for some direction from my colleagues here about the timing for that particular study. And it looks like next spring it should be completed. So we should be able to seek resolution before we get into the warm season in 2022.
Thank you. And I think that Councillor Orsatti, I think it was Councillor Orsatti that said, you know, some of this is COVID related, and I believe it is. Like, I have never seen the frustration and the anxiety with people about crowded beaches all throughout Innisfil. There were people finding road ends that I never knew existed, and camping on them. And we all saw the drama around Wilkins Beach in Barrie this summer. I think I told you before, I was in Wawa and heard all about how the Citiettes from Sault Ste. Marie were coming up and destroying their beaches in Wawa. So this is not, I get that it's with, you know, having a resort next door makes it more difficult, but it's definitely, this summer, it was rampant everywhere. There wasn't a little tiny piece of road end, one of them in Councillor Fowler's ward that he'll remember, that wasn't controversial about other people accessing water near their house, blocking their driveways, leaving a mess on these road allowances. Anyone else before we call the vote on the motion as amended? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Those opposed? So that is carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Good discussion. Next is item C5, which was pulled by Councillor Ices. And that is the Backyard Hens in Settlement Areas Pilot Program request.
Thank you, Worship. I have Councillor Orsatti as my seconder for putting this on the floor.
Thank you.
So a little bit, I guess, a little bit of background on this item. It was a notice of motion from Councillor Fowler, I believe, and staff looked into providing a report for us to either approve or not approve. And I remember very clearly leading up to that, Councillor Waters called me as a farmer on council, and he asked me, you know, what do you think about the idea of chickens in your backyard? And to tell you the truth, I hadn't thought about it too much in depth, and my answer at the time was, you know, it seems fairly harmless. Everyone likes to see a chicken walking around in their backyard scratching away, and you get some eggs out of it. But as I thought about it a little bit more, and I guess for the record, I do have a family. I have a cousin who runs a commercial egg laying operation on Innisfil Beach Road. So I do know what's involved with a commercial farming operation that lays eggs, and I dug into it a little bit more deeply, and the farm that I run is a dairy farm, and we have protocols for animal welfare, for, you know, the manure, housing. There's a lot of different things that we are asked to be responsible for, and one of them is biosecurity. And I guess if you read in the report, you know, some of the concerns that are brought forward for this motion to have chickens in the urban setting is the biosecurity aspect, and that should give us some cause for concern, especially when we are in a pandemic and we know very well what a virus can do. So the Poultry Association, the different farms have they monitor that very, very carefully, and so there are risks involved with having backyard flocks. Viruses that can be transmitted by wildlife that occur in flocks or small outdoor chickens that you would have in your backyard, very serious consequences. So as I dug into that and thought about it more, I have kind of changed my mind on that, Councillor Waters, that I don't think it's a great idea right now for our residents in an urban setting to have chickens in their backyard. The report speaks about there being no cost, which I find it to be a bit of a flawed approach, because it's based on the fact that, well, we have complaints now, so we'll have complaints then, so it's like a no net gain in cost. But to set it up properly, unless the intent is to have those people who want to have chickens in their backyard set it up properly with, what are you going to do with the manure? What are you going to do with the dead stock, the smell that can occur? There needs to be quite a bit stricter regulations that would cost the town. And I don't see that in the recommendation. I see it as being a little bit loose. And so for those reasons, I would hope that I can change the recommendation to, just to defeat this recommendation and keep our bylaws the way they are, where livestock is in a rural and agricultural setting. And it would also give our bylaw officers a little less to worry about. They seem to have a lot on their plate right now. So I'll open that up for more comments, but that's my take on this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ices. Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Worship. If we need to change the mover to get this on the floor, if Councillor Ices is not going to support it, I can do that just to have the fulsome discussion. I did have a couple of comments, if you don't mind. I know that we have these existing locations in Ward 7 who have operated on the outskirts or just inside residential areas for years. I'm not too aware of too many issues with them from professional farmers, as Councillor Ices has identified. Concerns have been raised about disease spreading and the health of outdoor flocks, especially in the winter in small yards, as well as many inspections that happen. To me, a pilot would provide the opportunity to determine the long-term feasibility of this, and possibly allowing these permanently in urban areas, as it is in other municipalities. The way I read the recommendation is that staff will be coming back with an opportunity for a program. We're not approving a program tonight. We're just letting staff move forward to say this is what could possibly happen. So with that, I have no concern with the report the way it's written. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nichols. So if I could ask the Deputy Clerk then to change the mover to Councillor Nicol as opposed to Councillor Ices. Thank you. Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can truly understand Councillor Ices' concerns. I just wonder, beside the Ices chicken laying operation, how many barns, chicken barns, are there in the town of Innisfil, where they grow chickens to go to market, 8, 10, 12-week hens, where they have thousands of chickens in a barn, and I'm sure there's a few of them here in Innisfil. I know Wardlaw Farms and a few others. I'm just thinking about the many thousands and thousands of chickens, if that could catch a virus, and it kind of concerns me. And so I think that we need some pretty stringent bylaws before we allow this, make sure the limits are the limits, and that these birds are looked after and, properly managed before we allow this. And I don't know if anybody knows the answer to how many chicken barns there are here in town, but I would like to know.
We might have to get back to you on that one, Councillor Van Berkel. I know there's one near me, but it's actually in the town of New Tecumseh.
That's right, there is.
Yeah. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Worship. Like Councillor Icy said, it's always important, since we have a farmer on council, to always ask questions when you have an expert in your field, and that's why I did, because I pass that farm at the Yonge Street and the 20 State line all the time. So I think when I originally saw this bylaw, I was full for it. I'm supportive of having farm animals incorporated in urban settings all the time, just because I think it's such an educational opportunity. I learn about where your food comes from and all that kind of stuff. In some communities, they do not have, flow-bone chicken farms in their neighborhoods. And I'm not too sure how much of a liability the town takes that if a virus does kick in and they have to destroy all their farms, whether or not we are liable at all for making that decision happen. So although I am always supportive of having farm animals in urban conditions, I can't see any amendments that would make me feel safe. So I'm going to support Councillor Isis on this one here, and not. I wouldn't want to see them in an urban environment in this setting here in this municipality, just because we do have farmers who whose lifestyle depends on it.
Thank you, Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Now, just to add a bit of context to this conversation, everyone, from what the vibe I'm getting is that everybody is assuming that, we're going to open the gates and then chickens will storm the roads. It's not what we're dealing with in the scenario. We're looking at, if the report is read, they were looking at 25 residences. Now, I would point out that the idea of 6 or 8 chickens in a person's backyard, depending on their size, the lot, I disagree with. I like the idea of capping it at 4. So if you ultimately have 25 properties under a pilot project with 4 chickens, you're talking 100 chickens in all of Innisfil. That's it, 100. We're not talking thousands upon thousands, because if it was thousands upon thousands, we'd be having a far different conversation. And as well, they're saying that once an outbreak occurs, they are required to isolate the chickens within that area, to quarantine them between 3 and 10 kilometers. And that's for up to 2 months, I believe, if I read correctly, maybe a little longer. So right now we're talking overall maximum, if we narrow it down to 4 chickens per household maximum, which I don't believe every single person would do. Then on top of that, if you take into account that we have bylaws handled 30 calls regarding chickens in the past year, and 24 of them were in settlement areas. So whether or not we have the bylaw, it happens. People are doing it. And I would, in my opinion, it would be I'd rather have it in a controlled environment where for the next number of years, if something occurs, we know who to speak to, when to speak to them, where they are. This gives us an idea of a radius around everything. Minimizing it is not, I'm not against minimizing the effect, because if we go, for example, 8 chickens per household, that's 200 chickens. I'd rather take it down to 100, play it a little safer. But the idea being that we still can do this, but in a more controlled environment, because again, what it boils down to is that with 24 calls in residential areas, people are going to do it whether or not we have it. So I would rather, let's see what we can do to maintain control and organize it in a more steady fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Just one clarification. So the part of the report that talks about quarantining, if there is an outbreak, that all of the birds must be euthanized, and then there's a quarantine. Even people who are taking birds trucking them from one place to another have to revert around the quarantined area. They can't even drive through the quarantined area. So just wanted to clarify that. And I have Councillor Arsadi next.
Thank you. Yes, it's, it's one of these that when it first comes on council, you look at it and you think, okay, I can certainly understand how families want to, have fresh eggs or have a learning experience, educational experience for young children. But I think there's a lot of consequences that we have to be careful of in our community, because it is it's even though it's urban, it's still rural land, and we have a lot of farmers, and that's an industry. And one of the things I learned is that if backyard chickens, they naturally will eat droppings of seagulls or other birds. It's just something they do on the grass. They can then possibly get a virus. Those backyard chickens then with that virus and that outbreak prevent our local farmers. They are prevented from shipping any of their products because of an outbreak in the community. So, you know, it's one thing that, you know, I take seriously about the industry that we have in Innisfil, from Cookstown area to just here in the Alcona area. And I think in the planning guideline now, it's just within agricultural areas. So I know that this is a pilot, but it's a pilot that, you know, and it does say 1/4 of an acre, but my biggest concern is the health concerns. So we're in a pandemic. We're trying to contain the virus right now of the COVID-19 for our residents, and bylaws busy with that. So the change in this would mean that if we had people trying this, they would have to really, to prevent any outbreaks, they should follow the same guidelines and abide by all the regulations of poultry farmers. That means vaccinations, inspections, training, resulting in increased costs for our staff, timing, monitor, and bylaw. And, you know, as a counselor in an intensified ward, I know that I'm going to get calls from, you know, people with, because of the smell from someone's yard. And my brother has chickens on Gabriel Island. So I called him to find out what his problem, you know, issues. And he said one of his chickens jumped up on a fence, went in the neighbor's property, the dog killed it. Then it became an argument between him and the neighbor about, well, you killed my chicken. Well, you know, your chicken made my dog sick. And then an argument, now the neighbors don't talk. So I think an intensified ward, it does not make sense. In Ward 3, there is nowhere in this that I think that it fits. I think that we need to be, we're in a pandemic. I think that we need to focus on the spread of COVID in our community and allow our staff and bylaw to be addressing that. I appreciate that staff have put a lot of effort into this and looking at a pilot. I think the timing is wrong, and I am concerned, and I would want more information about our local farmers from them on the impact of an outbreak, because this is an industry. And we need to support our local businesses first. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Director King.
Your Worship, and you know, hearing all sides of the conversation here is a great debate. What I'd like to add to that conversation is that, you know, staff have been trying to, you know, balance that desire of the community. Ironically, maybe because of COVID and people are at home more often and want that food option, you know, with the agricultural community that, you know, we're always front and center trying to support as well. So, you know, that's been the rationale for this discussion tonight. You know, the recommendation before you is to just explore the pilot program and certainly come back to this council with some ideas. There's some ideas that are identified in the report tonight and some of those parameters, and Councillor Fowler's, you know, rightly pointed out, you know, there is the ability to place limitations on these and to educate people at the same time, you know, with those procedures that Councillor Sadi mentioned that, you know, regular farmers have to comply with in their operations. So, you know, there are some benefits to it. And certainly, you know, we can look at those and dig a little deeper into some of these issues and report back to council with the parameters of the pilot before we actually go to the pilot program. This isn't actually asking for endorsement of the pilot at this stage. It's bringing forward some parameters, you know, hearing the discussion that we're having here tonight. And not to drag this out, but, you know, to come back with some of those parameters, which, you know, may include limitations, you know, may even include on a pilot basis some certain settlement areas that are less dense than Councillor Sadi's ward as well. So there are ways to explore this a little further, and certainly staff are taking notes to include that into any pilot that comes back to council in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Keane. Was there more hands? I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you, Worship. Okay, Councillor Fowler said that we've already had reports of 24 people already doing it. If we go with a pilot project of 25 more people, that gives us 49 people that are doing it. if we do, let's say we went ahead with a pilot project, those that are not in the pilot project, then they are breaking the law. They should have to shut down their chicken coops. Because if we're going to have 100 chickens, plus those who are doing illegally, we could have 200 or 300 chickens in the area. So that's my one concern. And I did talk to a healthcare professional about it. She happens to raise chickens, her and her husband, up in Springwater. And they sell them at the certain time of the year. People come and get them, put them in their freezer when the time is right. I guess Councillor Isis, you'd know that more than I, what time of the year they harvest them. But she had to explain to her son that people wanted a bigger chicken. And the son, okay, that's a bigger chicken, so they'd raise it longer. And it wasn't for eating purpose, it was actually a cult. She had to educate her son on the cult aspect of certain cultures or certain different people that use them for sacrificial reasons. And I remember years ago, somebody telling me they'd been to one of these rituals where they actually sacrificed chicken and the blood and everything else they had to do with it. I thought, oh my God, this is disgusting. And I said to this healthcare professional, you gotta be kidding me. This is not happening in our area. And she goes, unfortunately, it is. And I thought, wow, my eyes were really open to it, that if we're using animals for that purpose, then we've got another problem on our hands. And I know, so we don't like to discuss those things, but it is a reality. And she is adamant about not selling chickens of a certain size at a certain time of the year because of this reason. If they're raising them themselves for this purpose of the sacrificial ritual they go through, that's a whole nother ballpark that we're playing with. And that kind of scares me. So I think—
So this is about laying eggs, meat, right?
They
so
actually use the chickens for, it doesn't matter whether it's laying eggs or not. They use a chicken for a sacrificial ritual. And I don't think, I was blown away. And this is actually a very educated person, a healthcare professional. And she said, you need to think about that as well, Dan. So I would like to see more, let's go back to staff with a few more tick-offs before we go ahead with it for a pilot project. Because with the pilot project, as Ken said, we have 25 people in it. We've got 24 people doing it illegally. That makes 49 people. And those 24 are not containing 4 chickens. They're going to do what they want. So I really do feel we need to look at this a little bit closer. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. Just maybe a little bit of follow-up with regards to, there are backyard farmers that have chickens right now, and they have, they do understand the risks, but there is still a risk there. And in the staff report, it talks about, there are already being 4 disease cases in 2021. I got the advisory that comes out from the Feather Board Command Center, which is the organization that looks after the biosecurity for all the chickens, the broilers, and the turkeys. And this report was dated November 13th of 2020, and there was a virus that outbreak in Oro-Medonte, which is very close to Innisfil. So the problem is, as we allow a riskier, inexperienced people trying to raise chickens, and there's an outbreak, it just doesn't affect Innisfil, right? We see how viruses spread as in the pandemic. When this outbreak came in Oro in November, on our farm, we farm between Oro and Innisfil, and there's just it's very difficult to work in that environment where you have to decide, is it safe for us to move our equipment around when there's this biosecurity, this virus that is nearby, and it causes significant, economic hardship to chicken farmers if a further outbreak occurs. So even though we can think the risks are low, viruses have been proven that they don't just stop at an Innisfil border. And our food system, thankfully, does a really good job of protecting us from that. So that's why we don't think about it that much. But it's definitely a concern that isn't just for a few chickens in Innisfil. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. Like I said earlier, I was in full support of Councillor Fowler on this because for educational purposes, but I've had I've done some reading. I've listened to Councillor Ices and a few other farmers as well, and it's just because this municipality does have a large farm in its midst that I think it does present. Even though it's a very, very minute issue, I think it could put a farmer or several farmers out of business. I did want to ask a question, and whether or not these backyard chickens can be vaccinated, that would make it safe. I don't know, so it's a question I just thought of as discussions. I think Councillor Rosati brought up the term vaccination, so I just thought, is there a vaccine that chickens can get that would eliminate this problem, and we can move ahead with the pilot?
Thank you, Councillor Waters. Just from the discussion, I'm going to suggest that maybe that this be deferred until a later time. And I don't think that maybe it could be never, but I think the reason that there was so much interest in the community was partly because of pandemic. When we had the residents come before us, many of them, it was about, being stuck at home. And so I think that hopefully getting out of the pandemic in the not too distant future, it'll be less of an issue for people. And also there is the issues around vaccines, also dead stock. And my daughter had chickens, and I can tell you it's the most expensive eggs that you could ever buy. You could never, it costs a lot of money for those few eggs you get. But and unfortunately there was quite a bit of dead stock to deal with, and the report didn't cover that. So I would suggest that perhaps this just be deferred to be brought back at a later date, and not to kill it necessarily, but just to maybe perhaps defer it, for another time that would be more appropriate. Director Kane.
Yes, Councillor Dolan, just to clarify, if Council is going to consider the deferral to a later date, as we've heard, there are people in limbo with backyard chickens. So I know our bylaw department would appreciate some sort of direction sooner rather than later, and so those residents as well that are sitting in limbo. So do we push this much further down the road, to have that certainty, or would we come back to Council later this spring potentially, with some of those further considerations for Council to consider, and then make a decision? But I'll leave that to Council to decide.
Well, that opened up something new, Director Kane, for me. I wasn't considering the people that were already in doing it being part of the pilot. That was something I hadn't considered. So was that your thought? Was that the 24 that are already kind of illegally doing it, having them form the pilot?
I will look to our CBO, Barry Vickers, to confirm that. But my understanding is, yes, the people that already have chickens, would be eligible to participate in that pilot to help bring them into compliance and help with the educational component at the same time. But Mr. Vickers might be able to clarify that for us.
Mr. Vickers.
Through you, Your Worship, I don't think the 24 complaints actually means that there's 24 residents out there with 100 illegal chickens. I think there, lots of times we get 6 complaints all dealing with the same property. So I think the number of people that are out there with chickens, contrary to the current animal control bylaw, I don't think it's that big a number. And the 2 that I actually personally dealt with, people came to the same conclusion that your daughter had, that it just wasn't economical. And you have to be there 365 days a year to deal with your chickens' needs. So as much as it's a great idea, the practicality of it might not be as appealing. So go back to Tim's point. What would council like us to do? So we're happy to take direction, and really that's your call on it. But it is true that we did have some chicken owners where we weren't, we cut them some slack in terms of pursuing prosecution in regards to their chickens. I'm not sure how many of those that hasn't been boiling over. So that concern hasn't been current, but I know that occurred through the last summer and into the winter, and it may be a problem that's sort of remedied itself over time. But
Mr. Vickers, or to council, I guess, I'm going to suggest then that a recommendation might be that the decision be deferred, and that existing flocks be grandfathered until those flocks are no longer. Is there any appetite for something like that? Councillor Ices?
Thank you, Worship. I understand what you're putting forward, but I don't really think it changes the discussion that much. As the report from staff, the way they are intending on handling, allowing chickens, it sounds like it's based on a maybe a one-time registration. So you have vaccinated chickens the first time, and then the next time we don't know. The risks, the biosecurity risks, the discussion doesn't really change, however long you defer it, unless staff in their pilot project is looking to increase the requirements for people and also the fees for staff to enforce it. I didn't see that in the report. So as the report states, I don't think a discussion further down the road, we'd be having the same discussion and having to make the same decision. So I would not be in favor of deferral.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, we've had great discussion, and we have a motion that's been duly moved and seconded on the floor, and it was moved by Councillor Nicol and seconded by, now I can't remember who was the seconder. Deputy Clerk Toma? Well, I'm sure they've got it. Yep, Deputy Clerk.
My apologies, I Worship. I was going to ask who the seconder was because I did not have it written down.
Councillor Orsatti, Your Worship.
Yeah.
All right.
No, sorry, I have to remove myself from that because I do not agree with the recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, so do we have a seconder, Councillor Feller? Okay, so I'm going to call the question, and that is the staff report that is, or the motion that's before you on the screen. All those in favor? Those opposed? Deputy Mayor, I didn't see if you voted for or against. Opposed? Okay, that's defeated. So we'll move on. Thank you. Next item. That was all that we had. So we need the RISE recommendation now. So moved by Councillor or Deputy Mayor Davidson and seconded by Councillor Van Berkel that we rise and report back, rise and receive report on the proceedings of the committee of the whole. All those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. And adoption of the committee of the whole recommendations, moved by Councillor Payne, seconded by Councillor Nicol. All those in favor? That is carried. And next is notice of motion. Councillor Davidson.
Thank you, Worship. I have to say I've been lobbied somewhere along this road, and I totally understand the concerns. I had the privilege today to be speaking with the Chippewa First Nation, Brandon Stiles, and getting the concerns of our neighbors on Lake Simcoe who've been here for about 10,000 years or more. They have concerns about the transitioning of a system where we take water from one watershed and put it in another watershed and the impact it can have on Lake Simcoe. I also have the report by Wayne Emerson, a letter that I'm sure all council has regarding the Upper York Solutions Project and how great they think the technology is, how fantastic it is. And that's great. That's great that you've got a good report there, but there are concerns in the report where they use the word or and, or significantly reduce, address the potential negative environmental concerns. So in the report, it sounds really nice, but if you read between the lines and you get some of this wording, you see they have concerns. And if we let this pipe go ahead, it's really saying, okay, we can have major growth in the York region, Aurora, Newmarket, Durham, and we're going to put our effluent, which I'm not sure if council's aware, but it's between 40 and 80 million liters a day going into Lake Simcoe. And that's a lot of capacity for a very shallow lake. If that water was going into the Dufferin, I think it's called the Dufferin Creek Drain, Lake Ontario can handle it. It's a colder lake, it's a deeper lake, it flows into the oceans. Not saying it's great solution, because the Chippewa Treaty actually is a concern for Lake Ontario as well. So they're not saying just dump it there because they have concerns with Lake Ontario. But taking somebody else's water and putting it in our lake, and I think as Lynn Dolan, Mayor Dolan said a couple of nights ago in a meeting, if it wasn't for Lake Simcoe, we wouldn't have Innisfil. If Lake Simcoe becomes too warm or too sick, because of the pharmaceutical studies that are still being done with microorganisms from pharmaceutical drugs, Lake Simcoe could go backwards. It's just starting to move forward, just starting to be colder again. We're just starting for the first time to get second generation fish or third generation fish. We're just getting our smelt back, our flounder back. And to let York go ahead, I really have a concern here. And we said, okay, well, maybe it'll affect the orbit or it'll affect our growth. If they pollute Lake Simcoe, we won't be allowed to expand our plants, and neither will the 16 municipalities around the lake. So why are we letting another region pollute our lake or impact our lake? And as Brandon brought up a point today, and I do agree with him, when I received this email from Wayne Emerson, it's like a conflict of interest. He receives his funding from York for the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority. They put the icing on the cake. So I felt that his response was total conflict of interest and I wasn't respectful of it. And we have to work with our neighbors. The Chippewas, this is their livelihood. They want to possibly do some expansion in the future. And if York takes away all of their expansion, that's not fair to them. So I really am asking council to think about this. And also down the road with the growth that's happening in the GTA and Simcoe County over the next 10, 15 years, what is stopping them from adding another pipe from the Durham region or York region to even dump more into Lake Simcoe? Lake Simcoe is a very, very fragile lake. It's just coming back. And I don't know if you all remember, but that's what got me into politics, was the concerns of Lake Simcoe, the ladies of the lake. And we received millions of dollars from the federal government to rebuild Lake Simcoe. And now we're just going to turn around and say, okay, York, you can put your garbage water in our lake. When really, in all perspective, it should be going into what we call the Dufferin Creek Drain. So I'm asking council to take good consideration here. And Councillor Waters, you sit on the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority. you're an environmentalist. I really hope you followed up on this. And where this project says we'll eject 40 million liters, that's just the beginning of it. It actually is 40 to 80 million liters of water on a daily basis. So I'm asking council to support this recommendation. Anyone else has something to say, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder, Deputy? Councillor or Councillor Van Berkel is your seconder. Okay. Other comments on the motion? Councillor Waters.
A few comments is I did read the report on the technology, and the technology they're using is the water can either be reclaimed and used for irrigation purposes, and they can up the nutrient levels of that water so it can be used. And it can use all of the water that comes from that sewage treatment plant, depending on how many clients they have. The other part of the technology they have is an RO, which stands for reverse osmosis. That is state of the art, the best system you could have. And so they've put a lot of money and thought into this. The water that comes out of an RO is possibly drinkable. So it's probably cleaner than the water that's going into Lake Simcoe. So in terms of the technology and the deputy mayor, we've had discussions about innovative wastewater technologies being used in various parts of Innisfil, dumping into the Nottawasaga watershed. And we seem to be promoting that technology as a good technology. So this is a technology that's just as good or better than what we were talking about earlier. So I have full confidence that the state-of-the-art system that they've chosen for their wastewater is a good technology. So I kind of agree with that. I'm a bit confused in terms of the groundwater that comes that is used in York Region in terms of which watershed it's in, because York Region is part of Lake Simcoe. So if they're pulling water from the watershed side, it would be going back into Lake Simcoe. And so if you're pulling huge amounts of water out of the groundwater, which is supportive of Lake Simcoe, and you're dumping it in the Duffins Creek, which is going south, then you're going to be reducing the water levels in Lake Simcoe over time. And so so the question is where does that watershed divide happen, and where is the water coming from? So I was under the impression that our Aboriginal friends were concerned with the pollution that was associated with the plant, not necessarily that it was being pulled from one watershed and dumped into a different watershed. There are international agreements that says that you should keep water you pull from one watershed and put it back into the same watershed. And you have, if you're going to take it out of that watershed and put it in a different way, you have to get an exemption. So I was under the impression that the water coming from York Region was in the Lake Simcoe watershed. And so it should be dumped into Lake Simcoe. If you're going to take it out and dump it into Duffins Creek, then you could have detrimental effects with climate change in terms of reducing that amount of water in Lake Simcoe. So there's a bit of misunderstanding here in terms of where the watershed divide is, and I think that's important. So, I think the technology is good, and that the water going into those creeks and the system they have is going to protect Lake Simcoe. And B, the watershed divide issue is, where are they pulling it from? If it's coming from this watershed, it should stay in this watershed. If it's in the other watershed, then then there's open concern for discussion. So so I don't know if I can support the motion, not knowing that definite watershed divide issue, but I know in the technology that the technology is a very it's the best technology that's out there, reverse osmosis. The only concern I would have on the reverse osmosis is it does have a bypass to it, and during storm systems they may bypass it, but they do say that the water still is cleaner than what it's being dumped into.
Thank you. I saw many hands and I didn't write any of them down. I apologize. Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. There's certain aspects that I agree with Alex, but I also, I agree with a lot what the Deputy Mayor says, and that's why I'm supporting this motion. One of my biggest concern is the warming of the lake. I've lived on this lake all my life, and I've seen it change, a dozen times. from bad to worse and from worse to better. And I can't see, putting more treated water into this lake that it's going to make it any better. I honestly don't. The lake's just starting to come back. I mean, I've seen at one point where, there were millions of smelt. Now there wasn't any. Now they're starting to come back. Herring, thousands of herring. It was an industry at one time. We're already having problems where, the lake doesn't freeze over like it used to be. We used to be out there, in early December. Now it's mid-January, and you got to be off by the middle of March. So my biggest concern, I'm sure the technology is 100%. There's no doubt in my mind about that, but my concerns are for the lake itself, the warming of the lake, and what it's going to do in the long run. I mean, I think I saw something the other day at, when I was at in-services there, that we run 3,852,336 cubic meters through a year from our plant alone. So, that we treat. And plus on top of that, we do another 10,500,000 cubic meters of sewer that we bring in with trucks that we treat. So if that's done 16 times already on the lake on 16 different plants on an average, and I mean, this is just in 2020. In 2021, I think it's going up, about 300,000 cubic meters or something like that. No, I don't want to lie about that. Anyway, it's a great amount. Plus the orbit is coming on. We're going to be dumping in so much more. So my concern is not the technology, believe me, because I believe in the technology. It's probably the best in the world, but the concern is the lake itself and what's going to happen to it if we keep dumping sewage, treated water in, and we're going to warm it up. There's no doubt in my mind that we're going to do that. And what will it do to our fisheries and that?
Thank you. Other questions or comments from council? Councillor Arsati?
Thank you. I don't have the expertise and background knowledge that Councillor Waters does. So I certainly appreciate, just as we did Councillor Ices on the farming industry for his background information and input into this. When I was looking at the letter that was submitted from the region municipality of York from Mr. Emerson with regards to this notice of motion, what came to my mind is that it would be the Ministry of Environment and all the regulations that would be set in place to make sure that this is done properly, that it's safe, and that, our provincial representative, MPP Andrea Kanchan, is also, said that she'll speak on behalf of Lake Simcoe, that these would be the parties that would speak out on any time that they would see anything that would not protect the health of Lake Simcoe. Because this also in this letter refers to the algae, reducing the algae growth in the East Holland River, I would think that, there's this other part of reading this that I thought that if anybody had a problem as well, it would be the town of Bradford that would be speaking up. And I felt that, this motion is really on, Newmarket and the region of York. And we're stepping out of our boundary here by telling another town that we don't like what they do, which I kind of think treads a little carefully on then the city of Barrie getting involved and putting a notice of motion on something that they don't like what we're doing, or the York region later. I think that it's really beyond our boundary of what we should be discussing. Just my thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can understand Councillor Sadi's point about, sticking your nose out, but I mean, in essence, we were put here to represent the people, and as the people live and thrive off Lake Simcoe, this is very much in our wheelhouse. The idea of the potential for changing watersheds, that troubles me. I don't have the clarification on that. The idea of warming the lake, as Councillor Van Berkel said, that disrupts the ecosystem that we have in place, that even ourselves, the Deputy Mayor, have seen rebound. I went to the general meeting of the Conservation Authority, Lake Simcoe Regional Conservation Authority, where we saw Councillor Waters, and we saw the effect that is occurring due to the fact, like, we're rebounding. It's at a point, in my opinion, it's a tipping point. We have it in a good place. We have it where we're actually moving in the proper direction, and the potential for harm, no matter how clean the water is, you can dump warm water, even if it's purified, into another location. It messes with the ecosystem. You can't do that. It's something that I fully agree with our Deputy Mayor over. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we should just clarify one thing for everybody right away, is where the watershed boundaries are. And I wondered if the deputy clerk, I've asked her if she might be able to grab a map of the Lake Simcoe watershed so we can all just see. Are you able to do that, Deputy Clerk? Sorry to ask you at the last minute.
No, thank you, Your Worship. We're just pulling it up right now. My colleague, the Assistant Clerk Kramer, is pulling it up. Here we go.
So the watershed, the southern end of the watershed goes almost to the Oak Ridges Moraine. So it goes down to about the southern border of Aurora. You can see actually in Innisfil, very, interestingly enough, although most of our population is in the Lake Simcoe watershed, most of the geography of Innisfil drains to Georgian Bay and through the Nottawasaga River. But so just to be clear, the water's not changing watersheds. The water is in the Lake Simcoe watershed. I just wanted to make that point. And then I was going to go to someone else to speak. Councillor Dickel. And then we'll go and do second rounds for people.
Your Worship, I agree completely with Councillor Waters. I think this is state-of-the-art technology. This is decommissioning outdated and failing systems to provide better flow and better lake levels, rather than sending it off to another watershed, which obviously is not appropriate. And it makes it somebody else's problem. Then the Lake Simcoe Regional Conservation Authority endorsed this, and their entire mandate is the protection of the lakes. So I have a lot of confidence in the Lake Simcoe Regional Conservation Authority and the region of York in this project. So I can't support the motion the way it is. I think that this is York's solution, and it keeps it in the Lake Simcoe watershed as opposed to putting it into Lake Ontario and bypassing our watershed. Thank you.
Anyone else that hasn't spoke once? Seeing none, we'll go for a second round. Deputy Mayor Davidson and then Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Worship. I understand Councillor Waters' perspective. Councillor Waters, I was with the expansion of the Innisfil treatment plant years ago when we used blue water technology, and our phosphorus loading in our water we were putting into Lake Simcoe 12 years ago was drinkable. We knew 12 years ago that we could drink the water coming out of the wastewater treatment plant on the 6th line. So the technology they're using is nothing new to me, okay? We'll put that where that one is. And Durham has get involved, which is Ajax, Whitby, that whole area. They're endorsing this pipe because they want future growth, and they can also take their water. And I'm trying to look at this map here to see where Durham, where Ajax, Whitby, they can put their effluent into our lake. And one of the concerns with the Georgina, or the Chippewa First Nations, is that if this goes through, there could be amendments to the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan and also manipulation of the plans. That's their concerns. And once we start amending the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan to accommodate the York Pipe, along with the manipulation of the plan, we've just destroyed everything we've worked on for the last 15 years. As a conservationist, you know that government will manipulate, big government can manipulate and change the rules. So we have that concern with the orbit. We went ahead and asked for an MZO, and then we asked for the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan to also be put into that MZO and protected. And we as council supported that. And here we're saying, okay, well, let's put your pipe in, and there will be amendments to the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. It will be manipulated to benefit York or Durham. And that's where our First Nations people are concerned. This is their lake. They've been on it 10,000 years. They've seen the change. They used to be able to drink the water right out of the lake 20 years ago. They can't anymore. Their livelihood is dwindling away on it. So it's nice to have technology, but we know that that technology still has its ands, ifs, and ors. It's in the letter. So the saying, yes, it's good technology. Is it the best? Is it this lake that's so shallow and so small? When Lake Ontario is much deeper, much colder, and can handle it without an impact on the environment. I think we need to respect our neighbors who are the First Nations who know this lake better than any of us and better than any conservation authority because it's passed down in their history. So I think we really need to think twice about what we're doing. There's 4 elements of life: water, air, fire, and earth. Those 4 come together. We destroy one of them, we destroy them all. So let's think about it from a perspective of our environment as the earth as a whole. Didn't we just celebrate Earth Day or something like that? So let's think about this, okay?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Waters.
All due respect, Deputy Mayor, is that the wastewater will not be coming from Durham. It will not be coming from Whitby. They're talking about the pipe going in the other direction, goes from York down there. It's not coming the other direction. So the water coming, the groundwater that York Region is taking comes from this watershed. They're going to put it in the sewage treatment that's in this watershed, and it's going to go to Lake Simcoe. It has nothing to do with Whitby or Durham. That's a completely different watershed, completely different sewage system, and they're not going to be piping water back this way. So there's going to be no wastewater coming from Durham to Lake Simcoe. It's going to be staying in this watershed from York Region. And so, and when you're talking about the water for Lake Simcoe was worse 20 years ago. And part of the reason why it's much better is because we're using much better wastewater technology today. And the RO system that's on the York Regions is state of the art. It's better than, I'm not too sure if it's as the same with what we're going to be employing in ours, but you can't say that it's okay for us to expand our sewage treatment plants here in Innisfil, and you don't give the same respect to York Region, and they're going out of their way to make sure that the water is clean. That it's going to be cleaner than the water it's going into. So it's actually going to improve the lake water cleaning. So let's not confuse Whitby with this watershed, because that's not happening. That's not the case here, and we shouldn't confuse the issue. Okay, this is York Region water coming from the Lake Simcoe watershed going into Lake Simcoe. It has nothing to do with the other townships. That's where the water could go if the province has its way in sending it down. It will be actually going into a different watershed. It'll be going from Lake Simcoe into Lake Ontario watershed. It's not going the other way. So the technology is good. It's the same technology or better talking technology that we're using, and we think it's okay for us. And we're going to tell another municipality that they can't do it. So, and I think with climate change, the fact that we're taking water out of the watershed and shipping it somewhere else to another lake will have detrimental effects on this lake in terms of water levels down the road.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to just make a couple of points, and I'm not an expert. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a geologist, but I'm a politician. So I'm going to make some political points. And one of them, the first one, is that if we could get the motion back up again, if that's at all possible. The motion says, now therefore be it hereby resolved that council joins in support of the government of Ontario. So that's not accurate. The government of Ontario, they are the approval authority. They will be the one that will make the decision, and it is still under review. So the government of Ontario is not supporting this. The government has not decided whether they would support this option or the option that takes it to Duffin Creek, which is in Durham. So that is still under review by the province. The Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, who I spoke to, they have not, they're silent on the choice, but they have defended the science, as Councillor Waters has said. This exact same motion, word for word, went to Barrie City Council and it was tabled by Councillor McCann. It was then withdrawn 2 weeks later because they received new information. I spoke to Mayor Keffer today and asked him whether he'd been approached with any similar motion, and he said no, and that he wasn't interested in delving into another municipality's business. He did say that he was thrilled that there would be that there's federal money to put a wastewater treatment facility at the mouth of the Holland Canal, which years ago they had been asked by York to contribute to that financially, and now with this federal money, and if York goes with the project, then that will do more good for Lake Simcoe than any sewage treatment plant around the lake could ever do harm. So and I totally respect what you're saying about the Chippewas of Georgina, and they have every right. They are a First Nation. They're not a municipality. They're a First Nation, and the Crown has a duty to consult, and the Crown must listen to them. But the point is, well, we're arguing around here, like we're having all this debate. We have no control over what happens here. This is the province of Ontario makes a decision. What this motion says is that we should, send a letter off to the province saying how, what our position is. And I struggle with that because there's been 12 years of reports, 12 years of studies, 12 years of public meetings with people in East Gwillimbury and in York Region in particular. And we've not been a part of any of that. So I guess my worry is if we decide to just say, yeah, we think that's a bad idea, we're going to send a letter opposing it, I think we're really out of our lane. I think we're out of our jurisdiction. I think that we should leave it to the people whose job it is to do this. And that is the people at the province, and hope and, have full confidence in our elected officials at the province that they will do what's best for the watershed and the entire watershed, including, all around the lake, including York Region as well. And those are my comments. So I can't support it. Any other comments? Deputy Mayor.
Just in conclusion, I agree with what you're saying, Mayor Dolan, and understand from your political aspect. But when the First Nations reach out to me and ask if we can do something to help them by letting the Ontario government know that we are concerned of this project and its impact and how grand it is, it may have an impact. When the people who've been here for 10,000 years are concerned, we who arrived here and took their land or whatever, we need to realize very strongly that we need to listen to them. And if they've got a concern, this letter going to the Ontario government says, hey, listen a little bit more. Don't listen to developers. Don't listen to big money. This is about listening to our First Nations, and it's their concerns. And they have strong fight. And from my conversation with Brandon Stiles is that there will be water coming from Durham. This is a manipulation of the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan and amendments to the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan that probably will come down the chain after we're not even on council. So that is their concern that I am trying to bring forward as a council, that we respect them, we respect their history at the lake, and we just want to make sure that the government listens to everyone 100%.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I totally agree that, and the First Nations, believe me, they have duty to consult. So the province must listen to them. They don't have to listen to us. We're one of 444 municipalities, and we're one. And our other neighbors around the lake are going to be silent on it. They're not saying anything. So, you know, that's the issue too. But, and if we were gonna pump water from Durham up to this lake, it would cost so much. There's no way. It would have to, the sewage would have to flow uphill to get here. So I don't think that we have to worry about that at all. Sorry, any other comments? Councillor Waters and Councillor Van Berkel, and then we're going to call the vote.
One last comment. Where I do agree with the deputy mayor is that there is a duty to consult, and I think I understood the issue with First Nations was the fact that there wasn't enough consultation that went on with this project with them, and that's what they're more concerned with. Not the fact that there was a chance that water would be coming the other direction, which isn't the case at all. So I duly respect, and I think that's, you know, in every project we should have that duty to consult First Nations, and I was under the impression that that didn't happen well enough that satisfied them. It didn't have anything to do with the technology they were using or those kind of things. So I think it's another municipalities. We wouldn't want York Region telling us about our sewage treatment system that we shouldn't be expanding. We should stop development in Innisfil right now because, you know, we're going to be expanding our sewage treatment plant. And we're going to be dumping more water into Lake Ontario and making it worse. In fact, sewage treatment plants in around Great Lakes have improved dramatically over the years, much better than they ever have. And I don't think that this piece of technology is going to deteriorate the lake, the quality of water. And I think it can practically improve it because this technology can remove pharmaceuticals, all those nasty things. It can remove phosphorus. It can, you know, it's drinking water quality that comes out of that. And 20 years ago, I don't think I would have gone to a tertiary treatment plant and drank the water out of there unless it had UV protection and RO, which wasn't a technology they used 20 years ago. That water wasn't clean enough to drink. The water coming out of this system is clean enough to drink. And so for the fact that the technology is good, the water is staying in our watershed where it belongs. It's our responsibility to take the water that we take out of the ground. We put it back into the ground as clean as it as it should be. So I can't support the motion the way it stands.
Thank you. Last word to you, Councillor Van Berkel, and I'm going to call the vote.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to answer Councillor Waters there, when our sewage system first went in, the mayor of Innisfil, who was Grant Reeve, to prove a point, went and drank a glass of water out of the sewage plant. So that's more than 20 years ago. But anyway, I was there.
They chlorinated it.
Whatever, but it was done. Because that's what we based our scenario on in those days already. You know, that would be cleaner than to convince people. And he did go out there and drank a glass of water. But my concern is not the technology. I know that the technology is better. You know, it's super. You know, and I'm not worried about it polluting the lake. I'm concerned. I haven't read anything in there. Are they going to cool the water down before it goes into the lake to keep the temperature from the lake going up? You know, it's the ecosystem that really bothers me. Like I said, I've seen the lake change so many times over my lifetime, from good to bad to worse to better. I think these are things that need to be addressed, and until they are addressed, I can't support, you know, the York region. I mean, I know what they're going to do in Bradford is probably a wonderful thing. I love it because it takes all the nitrogen and whatever comes off the marsh, and they're going to treat it. Yeah, that's going to be great for Lake Simcoe. But all of these plants all around the lake and what they want to do, you know, the one thing they keep forgetting is they're warming the water, and that is a problem. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Van Berkel. The letter from York did say that it would moderate the temperature of the water in the summer, so that meant it would cool it. But I don't want to argue science because I am so out of my wheelhouse. I'll just call the question. So all those in favor of the Deputy Mayor's motion? Those opposed? Okay, that's defeated. Thank you. Next is the motion from Councillor Orsatti.
Thank you, Your Worship. My seconder for this notice of motion is Councillor Van Berkel. And thank you, Deputy Mayor, for raising your hand as well. I appreciate that. The reason I wanted to bring this forward, and I already have a revised amendment to the end of this recommendation, this notice of motion, but I just wanted to speak on it first. For Ward 2 and Ward 3, during the pandemic, and I'm not sure if other wards are experiencing this, everyone's got the stay-at-home order, and people are looking for an outlet. They need to get out, they need to walk and everything. And it's increased a lot of use on recreational vehicles, whether it's an ATV or a motorized dirt bike. And what has escalated in the last while is the addressing the ongoing use of this in the areas specifically I'm going to speak about tonight, Webster and the 7th line. There's that area, Anna Maria and Jans Boulevard. This is a private developer property. There has been signs up that say no trespassing, no motorized vehicles, and private property. And there's been a fence around it. The fences have been torn down, the signs have been taken down. And I'm not looking to put in a motion that we look at punishing responsible residents or the users of ATVs or dirt bikes, and responsibly use those in the appropriate applicable areas or for the ice fishing industry. But it's really addressing many of our youth who are using these motorized, recreational vehicles in areas that they shouldn't be doing. In residential areas like Ward 2 and Ward 3, this goes on from early in the morning till late at night with revving of vehicles, and it causes a lot of residents being upset by the sound of the noise. But it's also about trespassing. And it's a time, I think, that this is only going to get worse the longer the pandemic is. The sale of recreational vehicles has gone, stores can't keep up with the stock. And I think it's time to address this issue, and especially in this corner. Many of the youth that have been in this area by law have tried to approach them. They speak to them. They say that they will comply. By law, drive away. They come back, and the youth are right back on the property. They've created what looks like a great track, and it only attracts more people to use it. I even saw a father pull up with a vehicle and a trailer to unload a small ATV to have a 7-year-old son on it, and then watch him as he was on this. Even though he was told it was private property, they just didn't care. So I think it's time that we need to have a concrete plan involving all the stakeholders, the property owner, bylaw, South Simcoe Police, and town staff to address this issue. We need to address the noise bylaw, the methods that we can enforce, and who has the authority to do that force, and is there fines involved? And we need to address this before this happens in additional wards. So I think we need to find a way to nip this in the bud, and this is happening in a very intensified area near all residential homes. And I don't think that South Simcoe Police or our bylaw officers want to go out and start giving tickets and fines to 7 and 9-year-olds and 13-year-old children, but we need to come up with a decision and an action. I have a revised, I'm just gonna pull this, look up what's on the screen here. I just want to see if it's the revised one that I have. Yes, okay. So what was changed from what was in your council report is that the bottom of this now reads that now therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to review the situation and take actions in order to deter improper use of this parcel of land that could include contacting the landowner to discuss the options and utilizing applicable bylaws for enforcement, and that staff be directed to report back to council should additional support be needed to bring this into effect. So in other words, if they can come up with tighter controls, they can start acting upon it right away instead of coming back to us on council for this. And because I don't have all the answers that this, and I think it's about, working, with all the parties that are in force. And as I said, I know the bylaw has been out there. Council received a copy of the letter from the property owner in an email. They may have not had a chance to look at this. The property owner themselves have tried for years, and it's only escalated in this past year to deter these children and from the use on this particular piece of land. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Nicol, and then Councillor Waters, and then the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship, and happy to see Councillor Orsatti's revised recommendation. I had some real concerns the way I read it originally. I agree that we need to look at the ATV bylaw, as that current bylaw is 16 years old. It doesn't even include the updated UTVs or side-by-sides that the province already recognizes, so it does need to be updated. My concern was that we weren't going to end up with recommendations that negatively affect the multitude of law-abiding citizens who enjoy our recreational community responsibly. I know I was almost questioning how we could be rural enough to consider backyard chickens, but then too urban to consider having ATVs still. So, if a few bad apples in a specific area are causing issues, I hope that it can be corrected rather than punishing the rest of the community. So I'm happy to see the new recommendation as it is, and I can support that the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Worship. I can support it. However, there are more than this parcel of land that this happens on. The 9th line behind Goodfellow, again, a great spot for taking your ATVs and racing around it. But I've noticed lately that I'm not too sure who's doing it, whether it's the owner trying to stop this activity from going on, has been dumping logs and dirt and everything else, making it more dangerous. So I wouldn't mind expanding this to just say improper use of this is private lands with ATVs. So because I think it's just a matter of time that somebody's going to get hurt, and these landowners are going to find themselves in a lawsuit. So I agree that I like the idea of being able to use ATVs in Alcona and Innisfil, but I think there are a few bad apples who are making it an issue for safety for other people. So if it's I wonder when that we would expand this a little bit to say that let's take a look, because we couldn't just do it for this parcel of land. We'd have to look at the township, the municipality as a whole. So I would look at expanding that piece. Thank you.
Thank you. And there was a small amendment put in there, and I just want to check with the mover and seconder if they're okay with that. I'm getting nods. Yeah, there was a brutal one a few years ago in Churchill, and we managed to get that one under control. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Worship. And thank you, Councillor Waters. I agree with you. We also have the same problem happening on Mapleview, just west of the 25th Side Road. They're going on private land. The owner there has tried to dump several things to stop them from getting on. The parents come up with trailers, tear everything out, and let their kids go and tear around. They cut through Sandy Cove Acres, right across these elderly people's lawns and out onto the 25th. So it has to be on private land. We also, I don't know if you remember, Mayor Dolan, when we had problems with the old Mika project with the kids using their ATVs in there a few years back. And there was a scenario where in Brampton, the Rice Group, who owned that land at the time, a gentleman did go on their property with an ATV, was killed, and they tried to sue the Rice Group for allowing the ATV to go on there, which was actually posted as illegal. My phone's been ringing a lot today and all week, and I've been dealing with issues regarding this particular area. These kids are not only using it to race bikes, and they've got pictures and videos, which I've received, of them smoking up and drinking there. So they're handling these ATVs and dirt bikes or whatever they are under the influence of alcohol. They're under the age. So my also thought is that we, the town, may be getting sued. And the residents in the area who are going through mental stress, a lot of anxiety, they could sue the town for the issues that we're not enforcing the bylaw that is in place. The owner has sent a letter dating back to 2016 stating that they have the authority to charge these kids. And I understand last year, some of the cops did follow these kids home and had a chat with the parents, but no charges were laid. So it's obvious that the parents don't even give a damn about what is happening with their kids. They don't know what's happening because the parents aren't there watching. One of these kids gets killed, we have a lawsuit. If one of the neighbors that backs onto it happens to walk out there for a walk with their dog, gets hit by one of these characters, we're going to get sued. So I really think we need to take some strong action. There's a few bad apples that ruin it for everybody else. And it seems like we've got a really bad apple tree in that area. So Councillor Sadi, I'm with you 100%. And I think with Councillor Waters, private land in Innisfil is off limits, period. And the other aspect of it, a lot of this private land, the one on Sandy Cove Acres, they're growing through a river which breeds rainbow trout. So that river is being torn apart. Flora and fauna is being ripped out because we're allowing this to continue. If we're going to speak up on the environment, here's a perfect example to start protecting it. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with everything that's being said tonight here, but mostly I agree with Councillor Nichols because he's right. This bylaw was, put in place 16 years ago. I remember I was on council at that time when the bylaw was put in place. And I think we have to look at that bylaw very carefully and put some meat on the bones where, bylaws or South Simcoe, if they confiscated these bikes for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, if they get caught or something, I think they'll stop in a hurry. So I think we really need to look at it seriously and give our bylaw department some power, or the South Simcoe Police some power to stop this, because like the deputy mayor and all of the other councillors, I've been getting calls left, right, and center on this. The track might be in Councillor Orsatti's ward, but the people on my ward that are, that are affected by it. So I would really like to see this bylaw looked at again and put some meat on the bones.
Thank you, Councillor Ices, then Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I too agree with the motion regarding ATVs. I guess I have a little bit of looking for a little bit of clarification over the issue of trespassing and whether you trespass with an ATV or if you're on foot or on a dirt bike or whatever. I'm assuming that we have laws in place, and it reminds me a little bit of all the calls we get regarding traffic. We're driving to this area, everybody's got to slow down, slow down, slow down. And we put we put some enforcement into the area, and then that helps. Like, is this an issue that we have laws that are that we need to beef up enforcement on, or is it that the actual laws have to be changed? So I would hate to, pass this motion and add more laws that when we aren't even enforcing the ones we currently have. So, trespassing, is that a bylaw infraction, or is that a criminal infraction where so Simcoe would be involved? I guess a little bit, if there's any comments on the enforcement piece and the laws that already exist, would be my question.
Thank you. Mr. Parkin.
Thank you, Worship. Just to answer that question on trespassing, trespassing is a law, a provincial wide law. It's not specifically a town bylaw that would prevent someone from trespassing on another's land. That being said, we would be able to pass rules as to who can trespass or who can attend on town land. But in terms of enforcement of that on private property, it would be up to the landowner to contact the police or for that assistance in dealing with those issues with respect to trespassing there.
Thank you. I can add to that, Councillor Icy. So I've had issues before. One of them was it was a vacant piece of property that people were using every Saturday night to have bush parties on. And when we contacted the owner, and the owner agreed to send a letter to the police saying, you know, I want you to enforce trespassing, and the owner had to put up trespassing signs, and then that gave the police the ability to trespass people. I don't know if that's changed. That was many years ago, but my suggestion was going to be, Councillor Orsatti, that a friendly amendment to where it says applicable bylaws for enforcement. And then I was going to ask if you'd be consider adding and engage South Simcoe Police. Councillor Ices?
Yeah, just maybe a follow-up. So there already are procedures in place for landowners to get the trespassing laws enforced. So that's where in this motion, I get a little confused that maybe we're talking about two different things, and the need to do a lot of investigation on the trespassing laws when there's already a route for people to go to enforce them. And if there's problems with that, then we can address it. But I'm not hearing that there are problems. I'm just hearing that the steps that they need to take haven't happened, or the enforcement hasn't happened.
Thank you. Councillor Orsatti?
Thank you. And just to share that on this property, they have had signs that say no trespassing, private property, no motorized vehicles, and they have it fenced. And all of that has been taken down. At their expense, they've replaced it all. And again, it's getting taken down. They have submitted a letter to South Simcoe Police in 2016 and again in 2021 to South Simcoe Police, giving the South Simcoe Police full authority to charge, remove on this private property, this particular one that has started all this use, which is at the Orsi land, which is on Anna Maria Jans and goes over to Webster in the 7th line. So in this particular property, they have in discussions with staff, it was about trying to use some of the other methods, like the methods to enforce, and it is private property. So how do you do that authority? You can't be calling, is it the property owner? He's not there. This is vacant, undeveloped land. Who's going to be calling South Simcoe Police? So it's the residents who call the councillors who complain because it's now 11 o'clock at night and the revving of, dirt bikes, motorized dirt bikes are happening. And then, by law, and then it's private property. So by law can't go. So there's a whole step in this. And I feel that this is why this needs to be a partnership. This has to involve the property owner in this particular case, and probably the others, bylaws, South Simcoe Police and the town to come up with how do we can handle the noise bylaw, but how do we have a method to enforce, and who has the authority to do that, and what steps can we put in place to start this happening?
Thank you. Just before everybody else goes, I just wanted to point out it is 10 o'clock. Is that our hour of closure? Could I ask for a clarification from the clerks? When is our hour of closure?
Your worship, it is 10 p.m.
Okay, so could I ask for a mover and a seconder to extend for 30 minutes, and we should be able to get through this. So Councillor Van Berkel and Deputy Mayor Davidson. Okay, then I'll go to Councillor Van Berkel, and then I'm sorry, Councillor Fowler, I had your name written down and I skipped past it.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. And I think Councillor Orsatti touched on all the points that I was going to make. But the one thing that I'm getting the complaints about, not about the four-wheelers and motorbikes, it's the noise. It's the noise that's the problem. It keeps people awake. So, at 11 o'clock at night, they got their kids in bed and whatever, and they're running these things around, and they, half of them don't have mufflers on them. So that we can do something about the noise bylaw. I mean, I know we have noise bylaws, and That is the problem. That's what people are complaining about to me anyway.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fowler, and then Deputy Mayor Davidson, and then I'm going to call the question.
Thank you, Your Worship. The one question that comes to mind is financial. Apparently the landowner has tried to erect fencing and signage, but it's been to no avail. So what are the next steps? And if he works with the town, who bears the burden of the cost? If he works with the South Simcoe Police, who bears the burden of the cost? If he erects fencing that is, near, for example, impenetrable, and that comes out of his pocket, what then? Like, we had to move forward carefully and understand where the boundaries are, what the rules are, and what we can do to support the landowners as much as possible. But at the end of the day, somebody has to pay for it. So the question remains, who?
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Going with Councillor Van Berkel's comments, and it's not just that noise with bylaw. These are young families living in these homes, and they have babies that are trying to sleep during the day. There's a neighbor in the neighborhood with mental health issues and is on sick leave. She can't get any rest. It's 24/7. It's just nonstop. They can't use their pool because of the dust coming up. The owner's fed up. He's been cursed at, almost ran over. It's just one of those situations. Maybe COVID's brought it on a little bit stronger, but it's really out of control. And I really do feel that we need to take a strong stand in this particular issue with private land. People need to learn respect private property. Would you want somebody coming out in front of your house in Cookstown with their motorbike, and was actually mentioned to me they might do this, and rev it during the day and the night while you're sitting there trying to do a Zoom meeting? I think you talked about your neighbor's lawnmower one day. So, we've got to really think of the people, and this is a young neighborhood. We have to respect the people that do deserve privacy, quietness, and respect. That's all. Thank you.
Absolutely, Deputy Mayor, and that's why this motion is in front of us tonight. And I just wanted to point out too that I did reach out to Chief Fletcher from South Simcoe Police today, and he said that he would be happy to participate in any enforcement or other strategy to help change this behavior. And he likened it to what our community engagement team did with the woodlot on Innisfil Beach Road a few years ago, where illegal activity was occurring. And it became a joint police town resident collaborative, and they managed to take that space back. So he thinks that he's happy to participate in any way to help solve this situation. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have one question. The time from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Is this a normal time, or is this a time that can be limited? Can we make it from 7 till 10 or 7 to 9:30 or something?
We can make it. Oh, sorry.
Is this a provincial time that is not normal for everybody?
No, Councillor Payne, years and years ago, 16 years ago, when this ATV bylaw was put into place, those were the hours that the council of the day chose. So that is up to this council to decide if we review the ATV bylaw like is being suggested.
Well, maybe this council's a little older. It should be shortened.
Wiser.
Okay, so we've had really good discussion, and I think we're all on board with this one. So all in favor of the recommendation? And any opposed? That is carried unanimously. Thank you so much for that. Next is announcements from members of council. Oh, sorry, nope, there's the deputy mayor has a notice of motion, which we'll be discussing at the next council meeting. So the notice has been given. And next is announcements. Any announcements from members of council? Councillor Nicol.
Hey, Your Worship, not to take council's time anymore tonight. I just wanted to do a follow-up on Councillor Fowler, who identified that wanted to recognize that there's some residents of Guildford and Churchill area that took it upon themselves to make a difference for Earth Day. Gail Loader and Donnie Crowder spearheaded a cleanup of the area, and we were able to get quite a bunch of locals to come out and help clear up dozens of bags of garbage that were left behind in the Shore Acres 20th Side Road and the second line areas. I just wanted to say it was great to see so many in the neighborhood pull together. Even if Petition Day is on hold for now, the community still comes together. So it's just great. And I just want to recognize the people in the area that did that. Thank you.
I think you're just putting in your name for the broom again. Other announcements. Seeing none, I just had a couple. First of all, we've just been through Volunteer Week, and it was very different this year. We couldn't get together, but I just sent out an email to all of the volunteers in the community, and I got the most amazing responses back. Some of them made me cry. So it was just wonderful to get all of that back. I wanted to congratulate Jen Richardson for being nominated and 3 times and receiving John Brassard's Volunteer Award. And I was remiss when I was doing my volunteer list. I'd forgotten about all the volunteers that are working to help at the vaccination center. So a big thank you to them. This next month is busy with days. So it's Saturday, May the 1st is Doctor's Day. May 3rd to the 9th is Mental Health Week. There's a child and youth mental health. And there's these little green ribbons that we're to wear. Through a local resident, Tiffany, we know about the proclamation. We've done a proclamation for the World Maternal Mental Health Day. And that is always something that I know she likes to mark with a big walk in the park, which unfortunately can't be done this year. So the hashtag this year for mental health is get real about how you feel. And so I would ask everybody also to consider that we also have May 3rd to the 9th is also Emergency Preparedness Week. That means more now than it did any other year. And then we also have Nurses Week, May 10th to the 15th. And they sure deserve a shout out this year. And also Police Week is also May 10th to the 13th. All of those events, of course, will be done virtual. And May 19th is PSW Day. And I don't think there's any group of people that deserves their own day other than PSWs. So other than that, of course, I want to wish all of the mothers a happy Mother's Day on May the 9th. And also one of our, I think probably oldest residents is having a birthday that day, Lillian Vaughn. She will be 102 years young on Mother's Day. And I think you'll all remember we celebrated with the drive-by last year. So those are my announcements. Is there any other announcements for the good of the community? Seeing none, thank you very much. We'll get the confirming bylaw moved by Councillor Van Berkel, seconded by Councillor Ices. All in favor? That is carried. And adjournment, moved by Councillor Nickel, seconded by Councillor Fowler. All in favor of adjourning. That is carried. Thank you to staff, those of staff who wish to turn their camera on to show everybody all the support we have with us here. I know when people are watching online, they can only see council with the videos on, but I want you to know the depth of support that we have here in our community, and thank each and every one of you for your help and support. And thanks, council, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.